I started programming in 1982 or 1983. I think I wrote my first lines of code in 82, but I didn't have a computer to put them into until 1983. So as I travel around, it's less common, but a lot of people started with a Commodore 64. Does anybody have a Commodore? You know what I mean? A Commodore, there's a couple. So that was a very common computer. There was the TRS 80, was it, that Radio Shack had? That was common. My brothers, my older brother and my younger brother and one of my older brothers, they built a computer in the 1970s because they couldn't buy a computer. They wanted to have a computer. And it took up a whole table. It was a huge table, and it used a teletype machine for the input and the output. So I started programming in 1982, 83. Why did I start programming? I was already not a boy anymore. I was 30 years old. And I was in a company. My company was a little signage manufacturer and advertising graphics. We made graphics, painted signs, hand-painted signs, and did things like that. And I could tell from the trade magazines and the trade shows that they would have, the computers were starting to become prevalent. The big companies with lots of money could buy a computer and give them a certain amount of advantage because of that. So I thought I better learn about computers. So I bought 2 computers in 1983, and one of them was a very dedicated sign manufacturing piece of equipment that would cut vinyl letters with a plotter and a little knife that would move back and forth, and the material would roll through it. You probably can imagine it's like a plotter for plotting blueprints, but it's for cutting material. And it worked really well. It was very limited. This display was just a little row of, similar to LED lights or something, a little printout. But I also bought an Osborne. So an Osborne computer had a screen that was smaller than my phone has. It was a big computer with a tiny little screen. You sit like this when you worked, And so I needed software, and I bought software. But the software was mostly not very good. And my wife and I talked about it. She said, these companies, we pay a lot of money for this software. They're making a lot of money with really crummy software. She said, I bet you could learn to write software, and we could make a lot of money writing really crummy software. So I thought, okay, I think I could do that. So I started writing software in 1983 that I would use for myself. And then until 1996 or so, I only wrote software that I would use or one of my employees would use. Look, he's taking pictures of me. That's probably not what they want. They want more casual thing, right? Here's the thing, is that it's easy to write software. If anybody here disagrees with that, I could have that conversation. It is easy to write software that does something. It's hard to write software that works well, that the users love, that is secure nowadays. In the old days, secure meant you locked the door when you went home, right? Now everything's connected to the internet, so it can be very difficult. The difficulties aren't in writing the software. The difficulties are on all the things that go around it. So for me, just starting to write software, I didn't have any way to learn except for looking in a book and trying out things. So I would write software. Literally every day I would write something that I would use the next day. And then I would add on it and add on it and add on it. So I like that model of working. And it turns out that there was a methodology to that became documented or formalized years and years later, and you can think of that as being agile. That we can write a little bit, think about what we want, do some small part of it, deliver it right away, see if it works, make sure people like it, and then add more and add more and add more. So that's how I got my start. So until 1996 or 97, I only wrote software that I was using or one of my employees, and then my wife, who's very wise, said to me, you are more interested in writing the software than in doing the work of our business. Why don't you change your career to writing software? She knew that if I could get tricked into doing that, she wouldn't have to work because we were working together in our business of our graphics company. She's an artist. She's done all the art that's in my talks. She didn't want to work in a sign shop. Who wants to work in a sign shop? I loved it. I loved it. But not many people do. So she kind of said it like this: I think that you could make a better living just writing software. Why don't you switch? So I started looking into it, and I found I can't take 4 years of college because I have a family and I've got bills to pay, and I can't stop that and then switch. So I started studying I went to the local university, which is University of Southern California. No, it was University of California, San Diego, UCSD. And they have a supercomputer there, and they had, all the courses and all the books, so I just bought the books, and I read the books. Terrible, terrible books, but I read the books. And I started learning that these people don't know what they're doing. All these books are telling us stuff that's not practical. I've been living in the practical world of writing software, it's not even theoretical what the books were about. It was make-believe in most cases. Writing software books, those are straightforward. Somebody writes a book about writing software, it's good for a year or two, most of them, and then they're outdated. I still have a few books from those days that are still valuable to me about the design or the thinking behind software. But to get to the point, the books on managing software made no sense to me whatsoever. I've got books that are 2 inches thick that explain how to manage a software project. And I'm sure if you followed that, you would fail miserably. I'm sure you've seen some of that too. So in 1999, I went to work. So I want to start, before we go any further and I taint your brains, I want to have us I want everybody to take one Post-it note. If you don't mind just helping to hand some of this out, take one Post-it note and pass it on. We're all done with COVID, right? We don't have COVID anymore. So everybody take one Post-it note and pass it on. If you need more, they've got some coming there. Could you help hand those out to me for me? Thank you so much. You're Francois. Thank you, Francois. So everybody just needs one Post-it note. You need one Post-it note. I'm going to ask you a question in a minute. We have 3 hours about, and there are 87 parts. Each part takes about an hour. So we'll see how we do. I have about 2 days of material on this. I just would like to have everybody have one Post-it note. And I'm going to ask you a question in a minute. The first thing is, I want to gather some information. And this information helps me know where we understand things together, where we have a shared understanding. I'm going to move my screen over just a little bit. When people first started asking me to share the things that I'm sharing, happened in 1999. And I was involved in a user group, and I was afraid to speak in front of people. So I had to learn how to get in front of people. I'm very much an introvert. I went to a talk here on introverts, and I think I'm on the, I'm an ambivert, but on the introverted side of things. We're all ambiverts, I guess. So here I am in front of maybe 50 people, and it's not uncomfortable for me anymore. It used to be. So please forgive me if I get stuck. Sometimes I'll get stuck, and I won't be able to continue speaking. So someone in the front will come up and nudge me, and then I'll get started again, okay? Because that's what happens to me. So this next question really isn't the question I want to ask you, so we'll go past that. Don't write anything down for that. But that's to get us practicing for this next one. No, this is the wrong one. Let me see back here. This is the one I want. Yeah, that's the one. One word that captures the idea of what is an estimate. One word that has the essence of what is an estimate. One word. Write that down and then bring it up and put it on the board. Either over here, maybe over here is better. Maybe bring it and put it on the board right here. What is an estimate? One word. What is an estimate? Do we have a marker? I don't know if there are any markers here, but I can fake it. Yes, please. Yeah, just put it anywhere. That'll be great. What is an estimate? You spoke English. Oh, you're Irish. That's like English. Yeah. I've been to Ireland at least twice.
Yeah?
And I've been to Dublin. I believe twice. Yeah, it may be inconvenient to come up, but one good thing in these workshops, if you write something down and you have to bring it up here, it keeps you active. It keeps the blood pumping. Otherwise, we all fall asleep like some former presidents in the United States. Look at all these. Excellent. We'll come back to this in a few minutes, but let's keep gathering that up. We'll need more Post-it notes later, so if you still have a few left over. I actually went to the Office Depot. You have Office Depots here. And I bought a stack of Post-it notes. You know, when you're doing these kinds of workshops, Post-it notes are really helpful. We'll do some exercises that'll have us using Post-it notes. When I was a child, we did not have Post-it notes. We would have to go out into the dirt and draw on the ground. That's how we did these things. But nowadays, we have Post-it notes. So this is a good thing. I like to think about the days when I was a child, but even more than that, I like to think about the days of our ancestors who lived in the deserts and the forests and lived off the land, and what they must have been like. They lived a very different existence than us, and we'll come back to that maybe, but I like to think of this. I was in a talk at a conference like this, and the gentleman was talking about the human need to fight or flight and things like that, and he said that our cave person ancestors, and they would, in the night, they would hear the lion roaring, and they would go in their cave and hide. Do you think your ancestors did that? What did your ancestors do when they heard the lion roaring? No, they grabbed their spear, said, food, let's go get the food. They'll either get the lion or they'll take the food away from the lion. They'll scare the lion away. I don't think our ancestors went and hid in caves, except for the programmers, because that's the way we are, okay? So we collected that. Let's see if there's doing it. Yeah, let's do this as a show of hands. So let me first look real quick. What do we have here? Yeah, I think I can work with that. We'll see what happens. We'll come back to that later. I want to do that before I've tainted your thinking, because what I'm going to be doing is changing you. The whole idea of an interaction between two humans changes both humans. It changes us. As a simple asking of a question. I'm reading a book. Has anybody seen the book? It's called Fluke. Everybody see that book? Fluke. It's about how random everything is. And I think it really ties in closely to what we're doing here. But one of the things he talks about is there are so many variables in life that making predictions can be very, very difficult. Simply walking in one door instead of the other at this conference is going to be a difference in your life. Well, let's see where we go with this. So, do you do estimating? Do you ever make estimates? Show of hands. Okay, almost everybody here is showing their hands. So this is not uncommon at a conference like this. I have also done conferences where it's mostly managers, and a lot of times the managers are not making estimates, but they're using the estimates. So let's see a show of hands here. How many of you use estimates? Not quite as many, but close to as many. So some of you make them and you use them yourself. You make the estimate and you use it. Most of the time when I've had to make estimates for software is because I was a developer or a tech lead, and we need to make an estimate that someone else would use. So that's not an unusual thing. So this is the thing. On a scale of 1 to 5, we could use a fist of 5. You know, like if 5 is the best and 1 is the worst, how is the results of your estimating? How is it working for you? Let's just see. It's like 5 is great, 1 is worst. Let's show. Show of hands. 3s, 1s, 2s, 3s, 2s, 4s, 3s, 2s, 2s, lots of 2s. I'd say the average here is between 2 and 3. So thank you for sharing that. That's really marvelous if you're getting that good of results from estimates. But that's why I wanted to do this first, because I'm going to tell you over and over again why I don't think estimates work for us. So thank you for doing that for me. We're already on to part 2, so we're moving pretty fast. There are a lot of parts. I don't know how many slides are in this deck. Let's see if I can find out. Oh, man. I'm still scrolling. Scrolling. That's already at 400. Scrolling. I'm now at almost 600. There's probably 800 slides in here. Let me see if I can go back. Well, I'm not going to worry about it. That's a lot of slides, isn't it? I'm not sure how. Yeah, now I shut it down somehow. We're done. Let me see if I can get it back. Yeah. Did I get it back? I have so much to cover here. It's a funny thing. When I first started doing software, I didn't, at the end of every night, I would, I'm working all day running my sign shop, and then I'd go home with my wife, and I'd bring my little, they call it a luggable computer. It's like a big case with a computer. And I'd sit till, we'd start maybe at 6, it's 18, and maybe for 3 or 4 hours I'd program, always writing something I would use the next day. And I never said to myself, how much will I get done in the next 2 or 3 hours? Right? I have 2 or 3 hours to work, I just work, and whatever I have done, I'm going to use the next day. So I didn't have anybody telling me, I need an estimate from you, because I was the one writing the software. I just wanted to have a good chance of writing something I would use the next day. Okay, we're on to the second part. The first thing is I share this slide in every talk I give from Peter Block. Some of you may know of Peter Block. He wrote a book called Flawless Consulting. In the book Flawless Consulting, he basically says, we're not the decision makers as consultants. We're there to help others make decisions. Think about that for a while. So most of the time when I'm consulting, people want me to tell them what to do or whether or not they should do it. But that's like abandoning your own advocacy. You're the one that needs to make the decision. I'm here to help you, but I can't make the decisions for you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to share with you some of the thinking that I've done. It might be wrong. It might be right. My talk yesterday touched on this. The idea is that most of the successes we've had were because of randomness. And if we think we're doing well because we know what we're doing, that's probably not typically true. It's because things happen to go well for us in spite of what we were doing. There's probably words for this in French because this kind of philosophy comes from France, right? So what do I know? So people become defensive about this. They will actually want to argue about this, and I won't argue about this. First of all, you don't want to argue with me. I have been talking about this for over 10 years. My first conference talk on this was in 2013, and I've done dozens of workshops, and I've heard every argument as to why we need estimates in software development, and they're all full of holes. So any good debater could probably have the discussion and prove that we're wrong when we think estimates are necessary, but still people believe what they believe. And that's for my other talk. So all I'm asking is you keep an open mind. What does it mean to be open-minded? That means to be purposefully ready to hear the other side and adopt it and try it before we make a decision. That's very rare, very rare. Does anyone know who that is? Grace Hopper. You win the prize. If I had a t-shirt, I could throw it to you. Okay. I could take my t-shirt off, I guess. Okay. So you always see old pictures of her. I wanted to show a young picture of her. She's a very well-known computer pioneer. Her teams wrote the first compilers, the COBOL programming language they created. She was part of the designs of the very early computers in the early years of computing. Humans are allergic to change. I'll read her quote. They love to say, we've always done it this way, as if that makes it correct. I try to fight that. So I've seen this as well. That's called dogma. You probably have experienced that in your workplace. Dogma is any statement of or a rule that we're not allowed to question. That's dogma. So anyways, that's Admiral Grace Hopper. So she's really brilliant. You should at least watch a YouTube video about her or something like that. So my goal is not to tell you what to do. My goal is to give you started thinking about these things. So maybe next year when I'm in the area, you can tell me how you've taken these things even farther than I have. Maybe you have better ideas. Or maybe you came up with a way of using estimates that actually works. I'd love to meet that human. I haven't met that human yet. Of course, that depends on the domain we're in. So I'm not... estimates work fine in some domains, but not in others. You're familiar with Cynefin? You all know of Cynefin? Some of you, I see one face going like this, but you've already heard me speak about this before. You know of Cynefin. So we'll talk about Cynefin a little bit later, probably, if we have enough time. But Cynefin is a sense-making framework that defines some domains. And in some domains, estimates aren't needed. In some domains, estimates work. In some domains, they don't work. So you need to understand the domain of the space that you're in. And then we can make a logical conversation. As a matter of fact, I only like to talk about software development estimates. And that's really the estimates for cost in time or money or something like that in software development, not even the estimates of value. Estimates of value are even trickier. They're almost always inflated, almost always. And they're made in a completely make-believe manner. But we'll come to that later. Somebody, if they do broadcast, if they're recording this, if they put this on YouTube or something, we'll see lots of comments of people telling me I'm wrong. So anyways, I want you to be thinking about what is working, what isn't working, and encourage you to not accept anything at face value. Whatever we're doing in our work today is probably wrong. Whatever we're doing, estimates or no estimates or anything we do. There's things we've misunderstood, but the world is pretty flexible. It doesn't matter that we get most things wrong. We still keep functioning. We will for a few more decades. And either my children or your children will probably no longer exist. So sorry about that. Okay. I'm not in control of these things, right? So, is this too negative for you? I'm trying to be up. So I want to talk about how this started for me and notice a few things. So Beyond Estimates started for me in 1999. It's when it became clear to me that this is a problem within software development. So I want to talk about two organizations I worked for in 1999. In 1999, I got my first job in a company creating software in a 3-month contract. It was a very small place. This was in the days before Agile. You know of Agile here, right? Do any of you use something like an Agile process in the work that you do? A lot of people do nowadays. I prefer something more lean than what most people call Agile, but I love the concepts of the Agile Manifesto. It's about people and their interactions, or the individuals and their interactions over the processes and tools. It's about working software over following a plan. Is that one of them? It's about collaborating with our customers instead of contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan, working software over comprehensive documentation. I hope I got that right. So again, I know this is all being recorded, so I have to be better than usual. So this first little contract I went on, they did not use estimates. And I was patting myself on the back. You ever pat yourself on the back and say, good for you, you know? I got my first job in software development, and I'm going, good. I don't think estimates are very useful, but the textbooks I've read gave a lot of information on how to estimate software. Well, this place didn't use estimates. And I thought, and this, remember, was before Agile, but they did a lot of things that would later be identified as Agile. And I thought, this is pretty good. And I'm being smart by getting a job at a place, you know, in a field where estimates aren't depended on. But when that contract was over, it was only 3 months. The way this company worked, in case you're interested, is if you wanted them to do work for you, you would give them some money. You would buy their time, but you would give them the money ahead of time. I want you to do 2 weeks of work for me. Here's the money. Then you work for 2 weeks, and whatever you get done in 2 weeks, you're going to be happy, and you got what this company did. Well, they had just sold 3 months of work to a particular company, and they didn't make any estimates at all. There was a list of things that needed to be addressed. It was mostly because of lawsuits where their software was failing for their end user companies that they sold their software to, and they needed to resolve these lawsuits so they wouldn't have these lawsuits. So this person that I worked for was really good at analyzing problems, getting to the heart of things, and fixing them very quickly. And a lot of they did was what we would now call agile. He worked very closely with the end customers. He started delivering stuff, within the first hour. We would start fixing the problems. Did a lot of things that really worked well, but they didn't make estimates. It was like, you want our time? This is what it costs. Give us that money. If you think maybe in 3 weeks we'll want more of your time, you better pay me now. Because in 3 weeks, someone else will be paying me. So you got to make those decisions ahead of time. So anyways, then I thought, boy, I'm patting myself on the back. I've gotten into the right industry. If the small companies are working this way, what are the big companies like? I thought I'd love to see it, because they must really know what they're doing. You can see how stupid I was. How naive I was. I was just a little boy of 45 years old, so I hadn't learned all my lessons yet. Here's the problem. I went off to work at this big place. This was in mid-1999. It was about April. So I was at that first place for 3 months, and now I go to the big place. And this was the project that they had for us. The scenario was a brand new project. They hired 200 developers, most of them quite young, 22, 23 years old. I have nothing against young people. Some of you might have been young people at one time. I have nothing against young people. The problem is failure and success will trick us. So the younger we are, the more optimistic we are. The older we get, the more cautious we are, sometimes, not always. And this was a bunch of very optimistic people who hadn't yet experienced the problems of software development. Some of them were just out of college, so they had no real experience. The oldest people on the project were 25, 26 years old, except for the manager, who was 32 years old. Is that old enough to have managed a project with 200 people? That was his first project with 200 people. He hadn't yet seen the failures he was going to see in the next little while. They hired me for a 3-month contract. They had this idea that they would take this chunk of work, hire as many programmers as possible, and get it done in 3 months. Anybody see the problem with that? How long does a 3-month project take? Somebody tell me. How long? 2 years. You're very optimistic. So it actually took 3 years for them to finally cancel the project. It was miserable from day one. So this is what I really noticed, and why I went to work on this project was they were going to do retrospectives. They were going to frequently reflect on how their work was going. And then remember, this is before Agile was a thing, so retrospectives wasn't what they called it. They called this lessons learned. Most places that I went to interview were not following any of the techniques that this little company I worked at had been using. Frequent interactions with the customer daily. Frequent deliveries, daily or more frequently. Reflecting every day, not once a week or once every 2 weeks. A lot of things. No comprehensive documentation, because things were moving too fast. It was a very interesting time for me. But anyways, so we went off to do our work. This is a depiction of 200 23-year-olds charging off to do their work. And so at the end of 6 weeks, we had our first retrospective. So they found 3 things that were the biggest problems they had. The first one was the estimates are off. Well, when you're 23 years old, you don't even know what estimates really are, and you haven't had a chance to see how difficult your estimation of how long something will take when you've never even done it before. Most of software is that way. But it was clear to me this was going to be off. I had already worked in another field in my sign shop. We can make estimates about certain things and not make estimates about other kinds of things because there are too many unknowns, too many variables. If the variables are known, you got it made. If the variables are unknown, you really have a problem. That's the space of software development. And there's some space, other industries that have that element too. So their estimates were off. The second big problem was they didn't understand the requirements well enough at the beginning of the iteration. So that means they had to learn them while they were doing them, but at the same time, the estimates continue to change. Do you see? Has anybody experienced this themselves? Maybe show of hands. Have you experienced this? This is common. Now, remember, I'm an old guy. I'm on a project. There were only 3 of us of 200 that were in my age group, very old men. Everyone else was either a young man or woman. There were a lot of women on this, but there were only 3 old people, and they were all old men. The other 2 got fired in the first 3 months, and I kind of was keeping my mouth shut. So I noticed this was a problem, but I didn't say anything about it, because these 3 things look really closely related. Do they look related to you? This is what it's about. Okay, so how are we going to improve this? Well, we need to get better at estimates. That's what they decided. How many times have you heard that? I've heard that now for over 25 years. If we have not yet gotten better at estimates, we will never get better at estimates. It's like, quit saying that's what we need to get better at. It's a symptom of a problem. It's not the problem itself. So what are we going to do about the requirements keep changing? We need to get better at understanding the requirements. Yeah, okay. And we need to quit allowing them to change them while we're doing the work. So that's like a freeze on the requirements. So is this going to work? Well, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be one of the old guys that got fired. So we charged off on our second bit of work, but the first thing was we're going to learn how to do this. They brought in trainers. It was a huge management firm. I won't mention the name of it, but it was one of the big software management companies, was managing this for a large manufacturing firm. They spent a lot of money on this project. So yeah, so how long does a 3-month project take? 3 years. So they think they're going to get it done in 3 months. They spend a lot of money not getting anything. So we went off to do our second chunk of work. We come in for our second retrospective. I noticed 3 big problems came up in the retrospective. What were they? Same things, right? It looked the same exact thing. How are we going to solve the problem? Yeah, same way, okay? You can see a pattern developing here, and I did, but I kept my mouth shut. So we're 6 months into this thing, and off we charged to do our work. I wasn't ready to get fired. So we did our work, we came back in our retrospective. You know what to expect here, right? Same problems, nothing's getting better. Einstein is quoted as saying that doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So this is kind of an example of that. But here's where the real insanity comes in. I then, in a meeting with 200 people, where we'd been, in little groups reflecting on things and coming up with what are our big problems. The technical problems, they're there. It's like my friend Llewellyn Falco told me once. He said, yeah, our technical problems are difficult, but people are impossible. Does this make sense to you? We're talking about human interaction here. This is why Agile was so important to me. We need to learn to work well together. But convincing people something's wrong with this can be hard. So what I did is I stood up I'm going to stand up to demonstrate. I stood up in the meeting, just so you know I can stand up. I stood up in the meeting, and I said this. Does anyone else see that there's a pattern here? Does anybody see a pattern? And here's 200 young people, younger than me, and their bosses, and the main manager, 32 years old. They didn't see the pattern. Well, what's the pattern? There's a pattern is, you can't see I'll demonstrate a pattern, okay? What is the pattern here? There is no pattern, right? Because you have a set of 1. What are you comparing it with to make a pattern? Let's get another example here. Okay. Oh, I got lots of good examples. What is the pattern here? We at least can guess at a pattern. What's the pattern? Black pens? What if I add this? What's the pattern? Pens. What if I add this? What's the pattern? Skinny stick things, right? That's no longer pens. Okay, so we have 3 examples to go on, and I say there's a pattern here. Okay, so explain it. Well, this didn't get me in trouble as much as opened my eyes to the real problem. So I stand up and I say there's a pattern here. This is what I see. We do some work, we reflect on it, we discover some problems, and we try to fix it, and the problems don't get fixed. And we do this over and over and over. Whoops. If we do this 2 times, I start getting suspicious. But I'd already seen this pattern before. So I wanted to give it a name, and of course, and I called it this, the cycle of continuous no improvement. We can keep saying we're going to improve, but we never improve. And this is a big part of why a 3-month project turns into a 3-year project, because the first day things are easy. The first month things are easy. Do they stay easy? With 200 people writing hundreds and hundreds of classes in code, they had an object modeler on this project. A person to keep track of all the objects and how they interact with each other in the code. They had 2 object modelers. I don't know if companies have that anymore, but that was kind of silly to me. That they would design stuff with a certain interface, and as the people are writing that, people are writing code that are going to use that interface. While they're writing it, they discover, wait, that interface is wrong, and these people are depending on it. So by the time that iteration is done, we find out we no longer understand each other. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that was going on. And the object modelers were always a couple months or a couple weeks behind. They could never keep up with all the changes. Well, let's go on. That's part of one of the problems. Anyways, the end of this story, in case you're interested, after the day I brought this up, I was walking down the hallway I'll stand up again. I was walking down the hallway, and these young people, they're walking to their offices or whatever, and I'm walking down, and they would just spread around me and go around me. They were my friends. I was getting to know them. And here they are. They won't even look me in the eye. It's like, you've ever heard of Moses? There was this guy, Moses, and he said he made the parting of the waters, like the Red Sea, so that these people, let my people go, or whatever it was. He's walking down the middle of the ocean. This was like that. Like they're all just spreading out around me to let me go through. And I cornered one. Because, young people, they don't know how to get away from an old person. They could just get around you. But you put out your arms, Jim. I said to him, Jim, what's going on? And all the rest of the kids, they left real quick. And he looked around, he said, look, the managers told us not to talk with you. This showed me there was a different problem than what I thought. This means the dogma in the organization, this is how we do things, was so well entrenched in a brand new effort that we weren't allowed to question the way we were doing things. This is a much bigger problem than that our estimates aren't working. If we can't question and reflect on our problems, we got a bigger problem. Okay, so I've seen this over and over. Since that 1999, I guess it's been almost exactly. This month, it's exactly 25 years since I had this experience. We could have a celebration later. That's pretty cool. All righty. So this was what I had told them. We're dealing with the symptoms and not the problems. I was already old enough to see this over and over. When you deal with the symptoms, the very best thing that can happen is we hide the problem and we feel good about it. Dealing with the symptoms does not solve the problem. I love this saying from Brian's first law. I'm going to read it directly. At some time in the life cycle of virtually every organization, its ability to succeed in spite of itself runs out. That's really interesting. This company, after this project, this company was making a lot of money. And I don't know how much this project cost, but it was something like $75 million by the time the 3 years was up. I only stayed there for the 6 months, but I knew people who stayed there afterwards. And we did calculations about how many people were working on it, how much they were getting paid, how much the consultants were getting paid, and we came up with that number. It may not be correct. I could have saved them $37.5 million if they'd just given me the money, and I would just told them, we're done. We're not going to do anything. That would have saved them a lot of money, right? Because why work for 3 years on something you're going to cancel anyways? And this ended up eventually causing this company to go out of business. I believe this was the beginning of them not being able to keep up with the industry they were in. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm using, give me just a second here. I'm sorry about this. I want to make sure that this is, yeah. I always work on my talks up to the very last minute. So some of you may have seen me over the sit-down area going through these slides, and I modified it for this because we have a certain amount of time, and I want to make sure I have the right one. So I want to talk a little bit about what estimates are, what they aren't, and I want us to do some exercises as we go. So far, is this seeming useful to you, or is it like, I wish I wasn't sitting here? If you don't want to be here, you are welcome to leave. It won't hurt my feelings. Actually, it will crush me inside. But on the outside, I'll look okay. I'll act like I'm okay with this. But honestly, if this isn't serving you, you're welcome to go. We are going to take a break. So officially, we'll take a break at the 90, it's before 90 minutes. But if we need a break earlier, start letting me know. We can take breaks earlier. I went to the bathroom yesterday, so I wouldn't have to go today. So, you know my humor is really lousy. Okay. So, no estimates. So this, I call this beyond estimates, because when I first started talking about this, I accidentally called it no estimates. And that was to describe a project I worked on in 2003, 4 years after I recognized that estimates are really a problem in this industry. I started devising my way of working, which was much closer to that first contract than to the second contract. Knowing that estimates aren't helping us, what can we do instead? And I'll share that at the end of today, or the end of this session. But I want to explain a little bit about what this is about. So no estimates is not for those making the estimates. If somebody in your company is using estimates, then you've got to be making them. They're going to come to you and ask you for those estimates. I don't have any help for you on that. It's for those using the estimates. If somebody in your organization is using, then that means if the system I'm going to put that back. Somebody wanted to have a picture of that. You're welcome to take a picture of that. I have some form of these. I can send out a PDF of these slides. It's some version that'll be similar to this. But I love this concept, though, because when I first started talking about what became known as no estimates in 2012, people thought this was for the people doing the estimates, but it's not. It's for the people using estimates. How can we work without using estimates is very different than how can we work without doing estimates. Because if the system you're working within requires that estimates be used, somebody has to come up with those estimates. I did make a thing, one of my coworkers at Hunter years and years ago, we made an app that was called Planning Craps. You know the game Craps? It's dice, because they play planning poker. So we're planning craps. You could throw the dice, and then whatever you got is what you got. If you didn't like it, you could hit the jiggle button, and it would jiggle it and make it flip over to something else till you got it to something you wanted. So that was planning craps. So if somebody needs the estimates, then we need to do them. Why is it that software developers are asked to do them? We somehow magically know how long it's going to take to do something we don't yet know anything about. We're the ones who magically know that. When I owned my sign shop, I would never go in the back, so I was a sign painter, with a brush and painting letters and crafting other signs out of wood, plastics, screen printing, all kinds of things. I would never go into the back to ask one of the sign painters, how long will it take you to paint this sign? Why don't I need to ask them that? Because I already know. I know how long it takes to paint a sign. I'm the manager of the business. The manager of the business has experience. The manager of business knows what it takes to do the work. How come in software development, the managers don't know anything? Pardon me, managers. They're recording this. Some of you are there managers here? Who's a manager? Okay. Well, good, because usually I will insult managers quite a bit. I've been a manager all my life. My first business that I actually owned and ran as a business for an extended period of time, I started when I was 16 years old. I bought a pretty much new pickup truck that was used, a couple old lawnmowers, fixed them up, and I hired 2 boys from school, and I would drive them around to different neighborhoods, and we would mow lawns. Mostly, I went from door to door to talk to the homeowners, so I could ask them, could you pay us to mow your lawn? So I've been managing people since I was 16 years old. I know what it means to manage things. I've owned something like 16 small businesses, each one at a time. I'd start a business, I'd get bored with it, and I'd sell it or part it out and buy it or start another business. And I did this over and over. I was a serial business person, never an entrepreneur. Always just owning my own job, but it usually meant I have to hire some people. So I would hire 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or maybe 15 people total at a time. So these were small businesses. So I've been managing things all my life. When I got into my 40s, I started working in software. I would quickly rise up to be a team lead and maybe a manager over some chunk of people and maybe a little higher than that. So I've been managing things. I understand what it means to manage. If I do not offend you, come up afterwards. I'll find some way to offend you, okay? I have a right to make fun of managers, is all I'm telling you. I think that we get it wrong. Management in software development is as wrong as in anything else I've seen. And I made it clear yesterday. I learned how to manage well when I was very young. My first job, I was 13, and my manager was very good. And if I just copied what he did, I would have been a great manager. I turned into a manager I would not want to work for over the years. I had to relearn how to be a human being. How do you rehabilitate a manager once they've become a manager? It's very difficult to do. Okay, so let's not do things just because that's the way we do them. That's sort of the beginnings of this. This is the challenge. Can we question things? That's the dogma. If we're not allowed to question, we have a problem. So this is the question we can ask. Are estimates serving us the way we would want them to serve us? If we cannot answer that with a resounding yes, we have a problem. If we can answer it with yes, then we can leave this talk and just go do something else. There's no reason to change if they're working well for you. Whoever put up a 4 out here, I would like to know in what way they're working for you. Not during the workshop, but maybe later today or tomorrow. I do have a meeting exactly like they scheduled me a meeting like within 10 minutes after we're done here. I told them I have a workshop and it's going to be done at this time. So they scheduled the meeting for right after. But after that I can talk if you want to talk about this. And we can go outside if you really want to discuss it. Okay? I'm not much of a fighter anymore, but when I was a kid, you know how it is in school? Like, if you're not able to defend yourself, you're the one who gets beat up all the time, right? I got beat up all the time until my father kind of taught me how to protect myself. I never started a fight, but there's a lot of kids who start fights, and how are you going to get out of it? You can't always run away, but I got pretty good at running away. But anyways, okay. So if the answer is no, then we need to start questioning things, and this is your responsibility. Nobody's going to come and save the day for you. There's nobody out there going to figure this out and then say, now look, the world's a better place. That's probably we're learning more about the way humanity is now maybe than at any other point in humanity, but I have a gentleman I talk to about once a month via a video call. Any idea I express to him, he can tell me what I'm misunderstanding. He knows what I'm getting wrong. I love talking with him. He's 25 years old. How he can have so much wisdom, I don't know. But he will say, well, the thing you're talking about, this is what the Greeks had to say about it. Or the Romans, or the French philosophers, or the economists, the Austrian economists. He always knows, and he can say, better read this first. And then I'll go read it. We got to understand we are usually wrong about everything. Find someone else help you understand what we got wrong. That's what this talk is about. So at least we're up to part 5. and we only have 82 more parts. Let's see what happens. So we need a definition to do this, and now we're going to use what we came up with. Remember we did this exercise? Those of you who didn't, if you disagree with anything we came up with here, I don't know how they're going to be able to have me in the film here, but I'm going to move things around here. So the first thing is I'm going to make a little bit of room over here to start, and there's one that says it's a guess. An estimate is a guess. Oh, here's another one that says guess. I'm going to look for, there's a guess. A guess. A guess. A guess. Oh, here's one that says a prediction. What's a prediction? It's a guess. Okay, we'll make that a guess. We'll use guess for, okay. Here's one that says an approximation. So that's not a guess. I'm going to put it next to this, okay? Here's one that says guess. Here's another one that says prediction. We already have defined that as being a guess. Prediction. We're going to group those together. Maybe they're not the same thing. Prediction. Prediction. Well, there's an interesting one. What's a projection? That's a guess? Is that good enough for a guess? That's almost worse than a guess. Because a projection is usually like, we're going to force that. I don't know if that's any good. Okay. We're doing pretty good here. Prediction. Lots of predictions here. I'm in France. So I don't know what people in France think like. Another projection. Oh, here's an interesting one. It's a wish. I wish it could be this good. It's like when you go to get married, right? And you make a promise to the other person. What do you say? You say, I will love and cherish you forever and ever. And the other person says, I wish that was true. But so that's not even a guess. That's something else. I don't know what that is. Here's one that says hypothesis. So a hypothesis is a statement of a guess, of something that might be true. So I'm going to put that under guess. Okay. Forecast. What's a forecast? It's a projection. So we think of forecasting sometimes as taking some data and operating on it, but what's the end result? It's a guess. Okay, I'm going to put it in guess. I'll let you tell me, right? So here's one that says budget, price. Oh, here's one that says a dream. It's like, yeah, so I don't know if that's, I'll put that over here. A quantification, I'll put that up here. A prediction. Oh, an estimate is reassuring. My wife taught me this when we had our business. When a customer comes in, they want someone who can guide them. So act like a father. You say, oh yeah, no problem, we'll get this done. Oh, we'll get it done on time, don't worry. And then when they leave, we go, oh man, what are we going to do? But while the customer's there, we act as if we know what we're doing. So reassuring, I'm not sure where to put that. This one says complexity, days, the hope. It's a hope, it's a wish. That's not a guess, so I'm not sure where to put that, okay? A ballpark. Do you know the term ballpark? That means approximate area. This is good. That's close. That's between approximation and guess, okay? It's a probability. Do any of you use probabilistic estimating or forecasting in your software? Does anybody use probabilistic? Okay. So I read a lot of books on software development estimating in my earlier days and the ones that came along later. They're huge books on this, and some of them try to use probabilistic ideas. There's people who actually promote that. There's too many variabilities in software development. We won't get into that too much, but I'm not going to necessarily call that a guess. Here's one that says plan, bet. It's a bet. Yeah, okay. You know how it is? They say, oh, he's on a hot streak. Like you're going to bet on a basketball player or something. Oh man, he's on a hot streak now. Yeah, okay. It's a lie. It's utopia. It's a budget. We'll put that up there. It's a direction. An estimate, give me a moment here. I think I brought some tape with me. I went over to their supplies room because I knew these kinds of things happen. That's because I made an estimate that something will go wrong. Let's see if this will stay up. There's things we can estimate, right? Kind of. I could estimate approximately the results we would get from this. Okay, it's a direction. Complexity, days, time, unreliable. An estimate is unreliable. So remember I said, let's have a word for estimate that has the essence of what an estimate is. So if your boss came to you in the morning and said, by midday, I need your guess on how long this will take. I need your guess. That makes sense. Could we use the word unreliable? Would your boss ever come to you and say, could I have your unreliables by the end of the day? I'm not sure how we would use that. But that goes back down. It's a failure. Guess estimates are a failure. Can you make out what that word is? Planification. Is that a word? I love it. It's a good word. I'll start using it. Okay. I don't know what that means. I'll put that here. It's a projection. It's an approximation. It's an idea. I'm not sure. I think I can use that. Okay. It's a probability. I really think probability is problematic. It's an approximation. Failure, wish, day. It's a day. It's a dream. I like the dream one. Okay, this is pretty good. Oh, a lie. Well, there's two dreams. Were you sitting next to each other, copying each other? Or what did we get there? I love this. Quantification. Okay, because I think I can work with, luck and fantasy. Okay, this is good. I'll probably come back to that in a minute, but thank you for having done that for me, because that really clarifies things. As a matter of fact, let me look at the percentages here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, this is what I usually get. Does this look like your board? About 50% usually is something to do with guess. It's a guess that's an approximation. I'm going to go over to this. It's a guess that's an approximation about the time, the days, some kind of quantification, so that we can do some planning. That's sort of what this is, so that we can have a budget and a number. It's a lie, it's a hope, it's a whatever. But this is what I almost always get. Do you see the problem here? Now, of course, you're all software developers, or most of you are. If this was a landscaping convention, and we were talking about estimates, I wouldn't do a talk on no estimates. Because in that space, an estimate makes sense, but not necessarily always. So when I was very young, my first job was working in a plant nursery where we grew plants. And then we worked with a lot of landscapers. And most of them would go out to a property, they'd look at the property, come up with some kind of design, and give the homeowner an estimate of how much it will cost. But that's not the same kind of estimate that software people need to do, because they can count the number of square feet and the number of plants, and they can ask the person, you want some trees here, you want some bushes, you want a hedge? They can figure that all out. There's a lot of unknowns. We'll talk about that later. But once those unknowns are understood, we filled in the blanks, we can come up with an estimate. However, when I was maybe 18, I worked for a while with a landscaper who did not do those kinds of estimates. So what did he do? Someone would come to him and say, can you give me an estimate for doing my yard, to landscape my yard? They were building a lot of homes in Southern California where I live at that time. And the people who could afford to hire a landscaper, these are, that's not like your normal homeowner just puts in a lawn and puts a few trees in as cheap as they can, but the people who have a lot of money, they'll go to a landscaper. So landscaper, he would go in and he would say, well, I don't do estimates. You tell me how much you want to spend, and I'll give you the best I can for that amount of money. Do you understand this? He said, I don't do estimates. Well, that was probably my first exposure to this idea of working in an industry where estimates were needed, everybody thought, but somebody who worked in a different way. And he was very successful. He would say, well, let's drive around the neighborhood. Show me a yard that looks the way you want it to look. Tell me how much budget you have, and I'll get as close to that as I can. Or maybe give you more if I can. But I will spend your money wisely. He was very well trusted and respected, and he was able to do business that way. It requires some trust and respect. That's an interesting thing to think about. This is what I normally see. Guess that's a expectation, maybe that comes later. It's a guess about the cost so we can make a plan. It becomes an expectation. It becomes a promise. Those are dysfunctions. Here's another group I did it with. I've done this exercise hundreds of times, probably over 200. It always comes out something pretty much the same. Look at, you got some of these. It's a wish. You probably saw me give this talk before, right? It's a forecast. It's an assumption. It's a commitment. Is it really any of those things? I like this one. I had to kind of fix it a little bit so I wasn't cussing. Yeah, okay. So, let's do an estimate. Imagine that I'm giving you a job to do, and you need to do this in 3 months from now. So, in 3 months from today, you have to write your name on an index card with a blue fountain pen. How long is that going to take you? Somebody tell me. 3 months. Well, we're asking about the work time of doing the actual work, not the lead time. 3 months from today, you need to get out that index card, write your name with a blue fountain pen. How long does that take?
1 day?
Well, that's what a programmer would say.
1 hour.
1 hour?
Do we have a blue fountain pen?
So you're kind of getting to the crux of the issue. If 3 months from today you're not prepared to do your work, that's going to be on you, right? So if you went to the car dealer and said, 3 months from today I'm going to come in to get my brakes fixed, what's that going to cost me? They'll open up the book and they'll look it up, right? So in this case, you know how long it takes to write your name. If I take a pen and I write my name on a piece of paper, how long is that going to take me? 2 seconds. I used to have to write about 100 checks a week. My wife would get them all lined up, and I would just go through them and sign them. I bet you it took me at the most 2 seconds, because otherwise I'd be there for an hour when it's just getting my signature on those checks. So it's not going to take us very long. However, what if I asked you to do it right now? What if right now you need to write your name on a white index card with a blue fountain pen right now? How long would it take you to do that? Somebody tell me. An hour or more. So the first thing you need to do is, do I have the materials that I need to have? Does anybody here have a white index card with them right now? I don't even have that. I usually bring one with me. How many of you have a blue fountain pen right now? You need to go get it. Now, there's probably an Office Depot or something like that nearby, right? But it's going to take you at least the time to go get the materials. The reason I bring this up is very important. First of all, this is a fountain pen. It's got a nib. It uses ink. It's not a ballpoint pen. And the ink is blue, or the ink would be blue if it didn't all leak out on my flight. If you take a fountain pen up in the air, it will all leak out. And then your bag becomes a mess. So I've learned to put this into a plastic bag first. What if I wrote out on that white index card my name with the blue fountain pen and took it to the product owner? You say, this is great. Let me see the pen. So there it is. That's a yellow fountain pen. But clearly you meant the ink is blue. I'm pointing to my screen. Clearly you said the ink was blue. We don't even understand what we're talking about. We never share the requirements in a manner that can be understood by the smartest people in the world. You know what I'm saying here? This is tricky stuff. This is not easy stuff. But the reason I bring this up, there's two things we talked about. One is the work time. That's the amount of time it actually takes to do the work. That's not necessarily the only reasonable number that we have to deal with. What's more interesting to people is the cycle time. The amount of time it will be before I get this thing done. It's not the same thing. I hope you understand that. If you take your car in to get it worked on, and you say, I want to replace the brakes, depending on the car repair place you've gone, they're going to give you a price that's based on the costs and profits needed to repair your car. But that time, they're not going to charge you for the time you're waiting to get the parts they need. They say, park your car, come back this evening. That's the cycle time. Come back this evening, we'll have it done by 5. We'll call you if we get it done earlier. Do you understand the difference? They're charging you for the amount of labor and the cost of the materials plus profits. In the other case, it's how long do we need to wait before we can get it? Now, I've got a car in the U.S. that a lot of places need to order the parts. The car was made in Poland, I think. It's a Fiat. Anybody have a Fiat? What's that? It used to be made in Italy. I don't think the one I have was made in Italy. It may have been made in Mexico or Poland. I don't know where. But sometimes the car repair places don't have the parts. They have to get the parts in. Now, luckily, there are part vendors nearby, so it usually takes a day or two to get some parts in. But you get the picture. They're not charging me for those minutes waiting for the parts. That's the cycle time. There's another kind of time that's called the lead time, and that's sort of when somebody first asks for something until it's scheduled to be done, to be worked on. So we might not even pick it up as work, but I don't really care about lead time. I'm just talking about cycle time and work time. We think the developers know how much the work time will be. Do you ever know how long it will take you to do some bit of work? I've seen, so first of all, when I first started doing software development, I never had to give it time to anybody. I just did my work. 15 years I worked alone on my own stuff. So when I started doing work for other people, I had a lot of experience on how long it took to do stuff. And yet, as you saw, the estimates were almost never useful. A few years later, 2003 or 4, I worked at a place where the manager would always ask us for our estimates. Usually it would be the team leads, sometimes the developers themselves. And I told them, look, there's not enough information to estimate any of this work that you're asking us to estimate that we're going to do sometime in the next 6 months. It's impossible to do. He said, well, Anders gets his estimates in on time. Kurti gets her estimates in on time. Greg gets his estimates in on time. Woody, why can't you get your estimates in on time? He's putting it on me. Like, I'm not going to listen to your nonsense that this doesn't work. So what did I do? I went and I talked to Greg and Kurti and Anders, and this is what I asked. How do you do your estimates? Because the boss is asking for them, and these papers this requirement doesn't have enough information for me to estimate it. This is what Greg said. I'm telling you the exact story. I still stay in touch with some of these people. Greg said, I just take the page, he's got a list of things and then all this stuff, but I just go to the list and I put down some small numbers. 2 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. The boss likes small numbers. Okay, I went to Anders. Anders said, I just take the page, I go down the list, and I put high numbers. 2 days, 4 days, 2 days, 2.5 days. Okay, I went to Kurti. Kurti said, I read each one, and I think, did I ever do anything like that before? How long did that take? And then she'll put her numbers down. That seemed like way too much work, and that's still not really an estimate. That's a guess. And you don't understand anything about it, even if you read the documents. I'll tell you that story later. Let's see how we're doing for time. We still, according to this, have about 20 minutes before that break I promised you. Are we feeling the need for a break now? Is this becoming mind-numbing? Do we need the break? Go ahead, out loud. What? Oh, a pen for me. Oh, thank you. I probably need this, and I should have wrote it on the top of there. Thank you so much. Okay. We'll keep going for about another 15, 20 minutes, then we'll take a break. If I forget, let me know, okay? So, I listened to what Kurti and Anders and Greg had said, and I liked what Anders said. Just put high numbers on it, because he actually said it like this. I put high numbers because I know something's not going to work out. So that's what I did. I went in, I made the list of high numbers. I put that on my paper that I took to the boss, and I said, I made your numbers for you. He said, great. And I said, what I did is I just wrote down some high numbers, not knowing what this might take. He said, good. He said, thank you. I did not tell him that's what Anders did. I didn't want to get anyone else in trouble. But I wanted to be honest with him. I figured I have to tell him I just made up a bunch of high numbers. He said, thank you. And I said, how do you use these? How do you think he used them? What's that? It was for his manager. Yeah, it's like the military. Yeah, if the guys down here say, you know, everything's bad, and that gets reported up to the top, everybody's going to get in trouble. Those guys got to say it's good, so everybody else can truthfully say, well, they told us it's good. This is not fair. But you get the picture. What he did with it, he put them into Microsoft Project. He just typed the numbers in for each line. I was flabbergasted. I was amazed. How could this possibly allow you to manage this project? The end of that story is he eventually got out of the company because nothing ever got done on time. And they expect the managers to be able to manage this stuff. The developers can't know how long it would take. They don't know the cycle time. They don't know how long are they going to get delayed. How often are they going to be asked to work on something else? Oh, that's important, but we have this emergency. How often are they going to be taken away by a vice president to go help them prepare their equipment for some conference they're going to? Like, the developer doesn't know these things. They can't know how long it will take. But let's go on. That's just my prejudice, I guess. Okay, so I've got to make it very clear. We're only talking about estimates for very specific use, because otherwise this conversation becomes way too big. It becomes way too much to have to talk about. So what is that specific purpose? Is just in software development. So I want a definition, and this is the definition I'm going to come up with or use. An estimate is a guess. You help me decide it was a guess or a projection or a prediction. It's a guess about some amount of time or cost or whatever. Some people say effort, or some people say complexity. An estimate has to be about complexity. What do you use? A complexity scale of 1 to 10? It's like, what does complexity mean? How do you judge complexity? I don't get it. But anyways, people use that. Whatever. To create some software or do a bug fix or a project or a feature or whatever it is. So that's how we're going to use the word estimate. It's really silly, all the things we think we need the estimates for, but they're used at different scales, at different sizes of companies, and at different positions in the effort. Like, some people might estimate, what can we do in the next 2 weeks, while other people are estimating, how much will this project cost, and we want to know that opposed to this other project. Can we ever know that stuff? This leads to a lot of problems in our industry. So, again, I'm only interested in talking about this for the costs and time for software development, not even for the value. I've worked at places where the people who wanted the software written for an internal use or for sale, they're going to project how much money it's going to make us or save us, or how much sales we're going to get because of this software we're going to make. That's always been a wild, unestablished number. There is no way to know this stuff. I remember on one, somebody said, this will result in a $30 million increase every year if we can get this software. How do they know that? They're going to have numbers that prove it. Are those numbers correct? This is problematic. I'm not going to talk about value, but we're in the domain of software development. So I'm going to, keeping my eye coming up for a break. I think we're doing pretty good. Oh, and now I'm splitting the parts into A's and B's because we got a lot to cover. So let's do this as an exercise. I think this is worth doing. And then when we take our break, we'll kind of have this part done. So this is what I want to do as an exercise. But we're going to need a lot more Post-it notes. I'm not really sure how to do this well. I'm going to divide out some Post-it notes. Here's 2 batches of Post-it notes. Can somebody act as a Post-it note delivery system? Maybe somebody on each side can make sure. I'm going to have you like write down and maybe get into small. You can just help pass it out to everybody. Would you do that? Just as quick as we can. Let's get these distributed. And if it takes more people to do it, we can do that. What I want you to do is have several Post-it notes now, not just one. And we're going to be talking about some ideas I want you to think about. So take a few Post-it notes. I've got more here if you need them. This is what I want to capture, but I want you to be able to discuss it a little bit with the people that are near you. Okay? So this is what we're going to discuss. Why do we do estimates? You can use several Post-it notes because I want you to come up with several things. So you'll need more than just one Post-it note. So you can just hand them out and then they'll pass them down. Yeah, if you need, maybe somebody else can help pass out some more. Let's make sure everybody can get some Post-it notes. You might need 2 or 3. If you can just help them get those, thank you so much. There's got to be some Scrum Masters here. The main job of a Scrum Master is passing out Post-it notes. So let's get those Post-it notes passed out. So you can write this in French if you want to, as long as we have someone who can interpret it for me. But the question here, these are what I want to address. Why do we use estimates? What do we use them for? What do we do with them? So what we use them for and what we do with them is 2 different things. For is more about the purpose. Do is the actual activity that we do. Come up with maybe 1 idea or 2 ideas, and then gather in a small group. You can maybe talk with the people behind you or next to you. If they're not very offensive or awful people, you can work with the people that are near you. If the people that are near you are disgusting, go somewhere else. Okay? So capture a couple ideas, talk about it. We'll talk about it for 5 or so minutes. Let's see how we're doing. Yeah? Oh, maybe 7 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. Come up with a couple ideas and discuss them, and let's come up with some kind of consensus amongst your little group of what's the primary thing you're trying to capture, and then we'll bring those up and we'll review them after the break. So let's go ahead and try. You can discuss it. We can get loud here, right? We're not going to bother anyone else. So you can argue, you can yell, whatever you want to do. So talk about why do we use estimates? What do we use them for? What do we do with them? And I'll set you a timer. Go for it. No. This isn't the one-word exercise. This is just, I want to know the reason. Why are we doing estimates? What do we actually do with them? We're using them. What do we actually do with them? That's what we're trying to capture. I'll set you 7 minutes. Let's come up with something. Let's come up with something. You need a pen. Does anybody else need a pen? We have some pens here. You need a pen? Does anybody need a pen? You can come get a pen. More Post-its. Yes, we got tons of Post-its. There you go. How did that go? Do we come up with some thoughts? So I think that we still have 5 minutes before our official break time. So I think if we do a quick gathering, and this is the way I want to do it, we'll just take, you spoke in little groups, 2, 3, 4 people. If we can take one idea of one group, we'll read it, I'll put it up here, and then we'll see if there's a consensus or more people with sort of the same thing. Then we'll find another one that's different, and then we'll probably be able to go through things pretty quickly that way, because I think there'll be a lot of commonality. Why are we doing them? What are we doing with them? So let's start with one. Does anybody have one they're ready to share? Maybe you can hand to me if your handwriting is good, and if it's not, you can read it for me, but let's get one. Do you have one? One that you think is good. Let's do yours. So is it clear that I can read? Okay, it says planning, roadmap, scheduling. Okay, this is why we're doing, and what do we do? How do we use them? What do we do with them? But planning, we do them for planning, roadmap, scheduling. Are others similar to that? So what else did we get? Yes. Either of you, yes. Is this good so I can read it? To know how much it will cost. So we're doing the estimates to know how much it will cost. And the question I would then say, why do we want to know how much it will cost? So that's more to the purpose. Here's one, okay? To decide if it's worth doing. That's about the cost, right? How much will it cost? Because we need to know if how much is it worth doing. You had one, sir. Okay. To synchronize and schedule multiple teams and activities. So this is going under maybe more the planning and scheduling area. Anything else different? To control and predict. We want to control and predict something that is a process of discovery. We want to know how many days it will take you to discover not the east, but but a new continent. How long will it take you to discover a new continent? We want to know that. We want to control something that we have no way to control. To budget resources, so that's about planning. To ensure a task is doable, so that's whether or not we should do it. To start a planning, whatever it might become. So we can start, so let's see what else do we get. Deadlines, we want to know those deadlines. Legal compliance, so a contract price. Yeah, this is a very problematic area. Could you get that one for me there? Can we match them? We're trying to match our competitors. Do you want to be in a business where that's what we're doing? We're trying to compete by can we do it at a cost that's at or below our competitors? You're in the wrong business if that's what you want to do. We can talk about that later. Justify the manager's job. This young man that I talked with that I mentioned earlier, he once had a sentence he gave me. He said, the only person that management is important to is the managers. Yikes. So the manager's main job is to make it look like it's important to have them on the job. Oh my goodness. All right, let's get a few more. Why? To start thinking about the unknown variables so that we do the estimate to help us think about what we're going to do. That's a good one. We'll come back to that. We'll monitor the velocity and when we measure complexity of the team when we measure complexity. We'll monitor the velocity of the team when we measure complexity. Why do we want to measure? Why do we want to know the velocity of the team? That's where I'm trying to head with this. What do we have here? To blame devs. So Yves Moreau, he says, we spend more time figuring out how to blame people than figuring out how to get it done, how to get things done. It's like, this is problematic. Anything else different? Yes, please. Can you get that over? Thank you. Why? We want to be able to negotiate. What for? To argument? What is that? To be able to discuss? To be able to, okay. And to what to do? To give to someone. So it's the someone we're giving them to that's going to use them. And so this is in some ways about the person who's making the estimate, not the one who's using the estimate. Thank you so much. Predictability, visibility, and to align people. So we're doing estimates, we're making guesses so that we can be predictable. Will that ever work? To have some visibility, we need to discuss of what and to align people. So that's about planning. And if I were to group these, and I probably should, and I can during our break, anybody that was outside of that batch of things, anything that's really unique outside of it, yes? Prioritization, so that's about that's both about should we do this or should we do that, and then it's about what order should we do it in. To make choices. So I'm going to put that kind of a little above everything else because I want to come back to that. Anything else? Okay. You want me to get enough steps in today? I'm okay with getting steps in. Hypothesis becomes contract and truth. Oh my goodness. If I could figure out how to get truth, I guess I would do estimates. What do we do? What are we to do? Okay. And there was one more. And then I think it's a good time for a break, right? Okay, because customers ask when it will be done. So they're the ones using the estimate. Why do they want to know when it will be done? That's who this talk is for. Why do we want to know when will it be done? We'll come back and we'll go over this again. If you come back. If you come back. So I'd say it's a good time for a break. We'll take, what's an appropriate, do you think the restrooms will be easy to get to and get through or not? 10 minutes? Is 10 minutes enough? I'll make a 10-minute timer and I'll get started right in 10 minutes. And thank you. If you do come back. If you don't, such is life. Is that, yeah, they cut me off. So how is that working? Moved up further to the front. Yeah, yeah. Were you here for the talk on color blindness? That was here just before my talk. No. It was very interesting how people perceive things differently, and that some things that I can easily see, other people can't see at all. So that's kind of a metaphor for what this is all about. You know, it's that. Yes, yes. We still have about 2 minutes, a little bit more before we start in again. Is that right? Yeah. Well, I made my timer for 10 minutes, so we have 2 more minutes. Will that still give us 80 minutes? Let's do that. Yeah, that'll be great. This is an amazing conference. One of the people that are helping run this told me there are 4,000 people here. That's a lot of people. Is that about right, do you think? 4,000? 4,500. That is a lot of people. Yes. It's pretty crowded. Yes. Well, I went to a conference in, it must have been like 1995, 96, called Comdex, but it wasn't like this kind of a conference, more of a trade show that they would get 100,000 people. And then I went to Java 1 Oracle, maybe 2018 or 19, and they just closed off all the center of San Francisco. And I have no idea how many people there. It had to be more than 100,000 people. But 4,000 for a specific conference is crazy. That's a lot of people. 100,000, I can't even imagine. And maybe Oracle didn't have that many, but it had a lot of people. Comdex definitely was 100,000 people. It might have been the largest trade show at its time in those days, all computers. So we start in 20 seconds. We lost a lot of our folks, but how was the line at the restrooms? Was it okay? Okay. When I do these online, I don't need to worry about that because most people have no line to get into when they have to go to the bathroom. All right, that's our timer. We might as well get started. So we've covered quite a bit so far, maybe too much, but I'm trying to condense a couple days worth of workshop into just 3 hours. So I'm skipping over some things, but what we just did helps us understand something about why we do estimates. So I'm going to walk over there. I might go off camera, sorry folks, for a minute. But the big thing is, we're doing this for planning. So when we say to synchronize, to decide if something's worth doing, there was one here about velocity, to get us to start thinking about things. But why do we want to think about the things? What's going to be the end result of the thinking? That's part of what we're talking about here. We need it for a contract price. So that's not really an estimate. It's a price. If you go into the grocery store and you say, can you estimate for me how much this milk will cost? What are they going to tell you? The price is right there. Just that's the price. We don't negotiate. Well, maybe you do here. Do you negotiate the price of milk in your store here? You might do that in some countries. I don't know. I know if you buy a scarf in India, you're going to negotiate the price, right? They have a very minimum that sell for. They see I'm an American. They're going to make it as high as possible. And that's negotiating. That's how a lot of business is done. We need to have a budget. That's about planning. But why do we need the budget? What is the budget for? That's what I want us to be thinking about here. To blame the devs is one of my favorites. That's really good. Here's one about to make choices and then prioritization. So those are two separate ideas. That I put up the top because I think that's kind of where I'm going with this. Here's one, because the customers ask when it will be done. That means it's them that are using the estimates, not you. This is why you did them, but what do you do with them? If you're just handing them to someone else, that's the interesting party. It's the person who asked for the estimates that I want to understand. Okay, so this was a good start. If we were doing a longer workshop, I'd try to force you to think about this more, but I think I'll just tell you, and then we'll do an exercise, an actual fun exercise. Wouldn't that be cool to do something at a conference that's fun to do? That's what I'd like to do. So what do the estimates try to do? This is very straightforward. We use them to try to predict something, but what do the estimates themselves do? The estimates give us some kind of information, such as, when will it be done? How much will it cost? What can we get done in 2 weeks? This is not how we use them. This is the information they're providing. How big is this thing? How much work will this take? remember, I wish that was over here where I could slam my hand on it and go bang. It's about, we're guessing how long it will take. We're guessing how big it is. I'll tell you at the end when I talk about what I would do or what I do when I'm working with people instead of estimates. If we're basing what we're doing on guesses, why are we bothering to do that? That's what I'm driving home here. So this stuff is information, and most of what we talked about over here. Why do we want to know our velocity? Why, so you know what I mean when I say velocity? They use that to say how fast we're going or how much we're getting done within a specific amount of time. Why do we want to know that? It's what's useful. Knowing our velocity is useless. You can look down on your car and see, that I'm going 60 miles an hour. What use is that to you to know? Yes? To be consistent in our estimation. But if you estimated everything as 10 hours, then we'd be very consistent with our estimation, right? So why do we want to be consistent with our estimation? That's what I'm trying to drive out here. What is the real purpose for these things, okay? So the estimates are a source of information, but I don't think it's a very useful source of information. It's not very dependable information. It's not going to be consistent. If we didn't have the variabilities we have, then it would be. So I know in my shop, one of my shops I had, we did a lot of screen printing of signage. I knew exactly how long it took for 2 operators running a single press to load the materials in, print the stuff, and take them off the press. We could calculate how long it would take to make 1,000 pieces. That's a very well-known number. No variability in that. If something started going wrong, we identified something like 37 variables. If something's going wrong, it's going to be one of those or some combination of those variables. But they're all known. It's a very easy space to estimate in. And it could be useful, but in the end, a customer doesn't want to know about how much, an estimate of how much it will cost. They want to know how much will it cost. There's a difference there. Okay, so are these facts? Please tell me, are these facts? These are not facts. So when I'm, again, back to the example of screen printing, if I've printed over the last year 10 jobs a day of 1,000 pieces per, I know how long it takes to print 1,000 pieces. I have data that proves, and that's close to being facts. Facts can be really useful. Facts can be useful. These are not facts. So this is what I was trying to get at. What do we do with this information? What do we do with the velocity? What do we do with it? And this is what it really comes down to. Estimates are used to help make decisions. What is planning? Planning is making decisions. The prioritization is making decisions. So the closest I think we got to that was that one. To make choices. We're doing the estimates so we can make decisions. And then some people say, to spark a conversation. And we did have at least one of those. Why do we want the conversation? Shout it out. To make an agreement, which is a kind of decision. Right? We want to spark. So the end result of that even is so we can make a decision about something. Does this seem correct? Your feedback. Why do we do this stuff? Mostly it's about making decisions. And these are the kinds of decisions. We'll get to that. What are we trying to decide? Should we do project A or project B? Very faulty decision to make. What would be better than doing project A or project B? Doing both. If they're both meaningful to us, why aren't we doing both? I've worked at companies where they're deciding this year what projects we're going to do next year. Talk about dysfunction. That's as dysfunctional as I can imagine. We're going to decide whether this is more valuable than that this is going to cost us less than that so we can make some kind of comparisons. Why do we think that's the reality we're living in? Hopefully I'll show you that's not truth. Okay? Should we do this project at all? Somebody had both of these up there. These are decisions we're making. Why do we want to do the software? And what is the estimate informing us about to allow us to make this decision? What if the estimate was wrong because it was way higher than it would have actually been? We're going to make a bad decision. What if the estimate was wrong because it was too little of how much we're going to spend to do this? We're going to make a bad decision. Why are we making bad decisions based on guesses? Why are we doing this? This is like how your dad would talk to you, right? Okay. So what projects should we choose to do in the next fiscal year? I brought that up a minute ago. That's like extending the dysfunction to the highest level in most companies. Most companies I've worked for that do this kind of a thing are making decisions about a budget next year or for the next several years. And if we're worried about the budgets, that means we are worried about the constraints of the amount of money we have. Has anybody ever been in a business where the constraint is the amount of money you have or your ability to generate money? Which is more important? I should just shut up for a while. Yes. The second is most important. In my businesses, it was always just small businesses, but I have worked in some very large businesses. It's much more important to be able to generate income than decide how to frugally use what money you have. It's much better to, unless this is being recorded, but I guess I can say this. Software development is an industry where you can make an untold amount of money more than the cost of doing the work. That you're worried about how much it's going to cost to do the work means you're looking at the wrong side of the equation. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not going to get, maybe someday they will take me out and chop my head off. They do that here in France, right? Because of the things I'm saying. That's what I read I've read that in the history books. Maybe I'm wrong. So, how many people should we hire? Have you ever made an estimate for work that will be done by somebody other than yourself? Have you ever had to do that? Have you ever had to make an estimate for how long it will take for someone you haven't even yet hired to do the work? I would get really upset about these things if I had to really prove my point here. But I know that what I'm saying is of little meaning to our industry. I'm just trying to spark the conversations. But honestly, I've had to make estimates for work being done by people we haven't yet hired, so we know how many people we need to hire. We'll need 2 database people, 3 front-end people. We're going to need a product owner. Your product owner has to be someone who intimately knows what you're doing. If you haven't even hired them yet, how in the world can you know how they're going to think? We need the interview. Exactly. So let's continue. We need to make decisions about these things. Planning for these things. Planning, prioritizing, scheduling, what to bring into the next sprint. These are the things you gathered there, but this is the reason we need this is for the decisions we're going to make about these things. If we're not doing it for the decisions, I'm not sure there's much use for the estimates. And I'm going to just put out my 2 cents. Velocity is a proxy measurement that is meaningless. And if we're measuring velocity, we will always we're measuring something because it seems like it brings value, not because it does bring value. Got to be careful about that. Doc Norton's written about the dangers of velocity, and you can find that on the internet or on YouTube or something. So what's wrong with this? You should all know by now what's wrong with this. It's because our decisions are based on guesses. So we're going to do a little exercise. This will require some paper. And if you have Post-it notes, you're probably going to need 5 or 6 Post-it notes for this and some easy way to draw. Because I'm going to have you do an exercise where you draw a tic-tac-toe grid. So each one of you are going to need to have some Post-it notes. So if you don't have Post-it notes, maybe somebody can act as a Post-it note distributors for me. And just put your hand up if you need you're going to need 5 or 6 Post-it notes at least. Now remember, I paid my hard-earned money for these Post-it notes, so no wasting, okay? I went to the Office Depot this morning, which was about a block from my hotel, and they had a whole aisle of Post-it notes. It's like a Post-it note aisle. Amazing. Now, some of you may have done this exercise before. I do this exercise for several purposes we'll learn later, but it's kind of fun to do. I'm going to have you paying attention to certain things, and I'm going to set up for it. I don't know if this is going to go into the into what we're projecting, what we're filming, but I'm going to put it over here. You know, all of these signs that we have here, yes, need more Post-it notes? We need about, everybody's going to need at least 5 or 6 Post-it notes at least for this exercise. Okay, so I'm going to open up another slide deck, because it's, I need to close that. Does anybody here play Minecraft? Do you know Minecraft? Anybody play Minecraft? Excellent, excellent. My grandson, when he was 3 years old, started playing Minecraft, and he would make these beautiful, very symmetrical, huge creations of buildings. And he kept insisting I should learn. So when he was 4 years old, he taught me how to play Minecraft. Now I play it with him frequently, although we play stuff like Valheim and Wobbly Life and other games now, more complicated things. But the reason I'm bringing it up, I guess, is that this is what he would do with me. He would say, he calls me Bappa. He'd say, Bappa, let me show you how to do this. And he'd show me how to place the bricks in some certain way to get the kind of building he's building, or to plant a field because you grow crops and you trade with the villagers, all kinds of stuff. And he'd show me how to do it. He'd say, you're doing okay, but you need to practice now. And would have me practice it. He said, 10 minutes should be enough, practice. Then he would evaluate me and say, you need a few more minutes to practice. He's 4 years old. Like, he's going to be like a good facilitator of workshops someday. He was so patient with me. But this is a lesson to learn, if I could reflect on it. The world through the eyes of a 4-year-old is purer and more real than the way we see the world. So pay attention to those young eyes. That's a good thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is, this is an exercise. You'll see that I got this from Tim. Oh, look at that. It's not going to do it for me. I need to get it's going to point to the wrong screen. We're going to go back. Tim Ottinger. He's probably spoke at this conference, and if he hasn't, ask for him. He's really good. So I worked with Tim for about 6 months, and during that period, I saw him do this exercise at a conference with about 300 people. I think we can do it with this group. It's easier for me when it's only 20 people or so. You're going to need 3 things. You're going to need something to write on, which I gave you the Post-it notes, but you could use something else. But you're going to need to share that something else with people near you. So it's got to be something that you're okay with handing to people next to you. You'll need a timer as really a stopwatch. So I'm going to open up my stopwatch, if you don't mind getting your stopwatch open. I have one on my phone, or like I like to say, this stopwatch came with a phone. Okay, so I can start it, I can see it going through the time, I can stop it, I can reset it. That's what you need to be able to do. So we're going to practice that in a minute. So everybody, you'll need to have your phone or your watch or some other device that lets you do a stopwatch, because we're going to time what we do, and we're going to see how our estimates of that goes. So I'm going to explain what we're going to do, but don't do it yet. No pre-work. We're going to time the work that we do. So the first thing is, when we're ready, we'll start our stopwatch. Then we'll draw a grid. We call this tic-tac-toe in the United States. Is there a French way of saying that? Noughts and crosses, but how? Mokyo. Morpion. I'm almost practically French now. How do you say chess in French? Chic. Ashik. I like to play chess. I've never been very good at it, but it's challenging to me, and I like playing the 2 minutes timer. You set the timer for 2 minutes, and everybody moves as fast as they can. We're going to just draw a simple grid on the paper where they're going to fill it in with the numbers 1 through 9. Almost every human can do this. It's very straightforward and simple. Then, when we get it done, it will look something like this. I don't care what order you put it in, but you need to use all the numbers, 1 through 9, and you can't use any duplicates. Each square, each space will have a number in it. Then we'll stop the stopwatch. Now, for me to know how things are going, I'm going to ask you to call out when you're done. And that's done by saying woot woot, but not like that. Okay? France, very demonstrative people, you should be able to do this. I'll demonstrate it for you. Where I live, San Diego, California, when I was a child, my folks lived a little property that they had, a tiny, tiny little farm. But the man who owned that before us, and had split his land off, had a large area where he raised cattle. So you would see the men driving the cattle through, and they're woot-wooting all the time. It's like this, woot-woot. So we're going to practice that, okay? I want to see if you can do it. Did you hear it? It was like falsetto and kind of loud. So this will surprise everybody in the hall and in the next room. So we're going to practice. I'll count down 3, 2, 1, and everybody will go woot, woot, like I just did. 3, 2, 1, woot, woot. Very good. This is like in church. If you go into church and everybody's singing, you just move your mouth so it looks like you're singing. So you're not really singing, but it looks like you're singing. You want to act like you're participating. But some of you actually wooted out loud, so I appreciate that. This lets me know when we're getting done. That's a way, because otherwise, if we're all sitting close at one table, I could see, but I won't know for sure here. Okay, so you stop the stopwatch. This is what we're doing. We need to know how long is this going to take. How long is it going to take to draw that grid and fill it with 9 numbers? For each one of you, you make up your own decision. How long will this take? How long do you think it'll take? Somebody say. 25 seconds? 10 seconds? 30 seconds. So the lowest number I've heard so far is 10 seconds, and the highest I've heard so far is 30 seconds. Anybody think it'll take longer? Anybody think it'll take shorter? So this is a good range. You have an idea? What is your 8 seconds? Look at that. Have you ever been in a meeting where the one developer says, that's going to take 2 hours, and someone says, nah, it'll take an hour? Don't do that. It's not a competition of who can name that tune in just 3 notes. Like, if someone says 2 hours, trust them. Don't say you can get it done faster. That's going to end in dysfunction. Okay, so we're almost ready to start, but you're programmers, right? Did you forget that? We're going to need to QA it first. Somebody needs to prove your work for you. So when you're done, you need to find someone else who is done, hopefully near you, and have them look over your work while you look over their work and make sure they did it correctly. Right? Will that change our estimate at all? Yes. It'll go down now, right? No, it's going to go up. So what do we think it's going to take now? Is 10 seconds enough? 8 seconds. Is 8 seconds enough? So let's make it maybe 20? 20 to 30? Good enough. To 1 minute, okay. Have you ever worked at a place? I worked at a place where I made an estimate, something like 4 days to do something, and I got it done the first day, and I took it to the boss. What do you think the boss said? Why was your estimate off? I got it done faster. It was easier than I thought. I got in trouble for getting it done too soon. It's like, how can that make sense? But that's how they thought. Okay. So that changed the estimate. We changed it. Now remember what we're going to do. We haven't started yet. You will draw the grid. You enter the numbers 1 through 9, no duplicates. Every square must have a number. When you're done, you need to get it QA'd. When it's approved, Then you stop your stopwatch and call out woot, woot. Remember, it's not woot, woot. It's woot, woot. Okay? Now, I'm a very shy person, and if I can do it, you can do it. Okay. So are we ready to start? So we still need to practice our stopwatch. So we're not going to start the exercise yet. Everybody get your stopwatch out, because I want to make sure you can use it. I've got one. I've got this one here with the phone built in. I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. We're going to start our stopwatch. We're not doing the exercise yet. We're going to start our stopwatch, and in a few seconds, I'll tell you to stop, and I want to make sure that we all kind of got that to work. The last time I did this, just less than a month ago, I did this at a conference, and somebody used their timer instead of their stopwatch. You need to be using your stopwatch. Okay? Remember, we are the most brilliant people in the world. And we get it wrong sometimes. So I'm going to count it down, and let's see how this works. Remember, we're just testing our stopwatch. 3, 2, 1, start. Stop. What times do you have?
5, 7, 8.
Somewhere between 5 and 6 seconds, most of us. Okay. If you have more than 6 seconds, you're really slow on the stopping. If you have less, then you probably were really slow on the starting. But I want to make sure we have that. Have you ever seen that movie Jurassic Park? Who's that? The computer programmer guy. His name is Nedry. So you notice how he does it when he starts the thing. He's got it on his timer and he's got it on his computer and he hits them at the same time. That's what we're doing here. It's like a spy movie where we all coordinate our watches so we can, our activity will all be at the same microsecond. You notice that guy in Jurassic Park, he made an estimate. He knew exactly how long it would take to get to where he needed to have the doors unlocked for him, go in, get the things he was going to steal, get in his Jeep, drive to a place where some dinosaur would kill him, right on time. Really perfect timing. Just like most software development right there. Okay, so you've got your stopwatch ready to go. I'll count down. I'll say, just like I just did, I'll say start. You will draw the grid, fill it with numbers. I know this is kind of repetitive, but people get it wrong. Fill it with the numbers, get it QA'd, then call out woot woot if you got it right. If you got it wrong, you still need to fix it. Fix it and get it right. But you'll probably get it right. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Draw your grid, put in the numbers. Be sure you started your stopwatch. Now, you can have it QA'd only by someone else who is doing the exercise. It has to be someone else who's doing the exercise. It has to be someone, your QA has to be done by someone who is doing the exercise. Okay. Now, I can't gather everybody's numbers, so I'm going to start right here. I'm going to do about 15 people because I can't gather everyone. So we'll just start here. If you don't mind, how long? 15 seconds. 15. Usually we'll get pairs like this. What is it? 29. 32. 19. We'll come back 17. Here. You did it together? You had the same time. Because you QA'd his and he QA'd yours? Ah. So I didn't express this. If you are not trying to do the work, you can't be the QA. In other words, we need to have this with people who are both doing the grid and doing the QA. Okay? Because there's some things I want us to learn about that. Let's gather a handful more. 17. Let's continue down here. 22. 26. 28. What is it? 29. 23. How many do we have here? Let's get 3 more. 16.
11.
Well, 11. Okay, I'll take yours, but I'm going to get out of order now. Sir, 20? One more. 24. I want to have the same people next time because we're trying to do a comparison. We're going to do this again. So what was our experience here? I'm going to ask, was it easier to rake the grid and put the numbers in it, or easier to do the QA? The writing of the numbers was pretty easy. Verifying someone else's work was a little harder. Because writing the numbers is something you could just do naturally, really quickly. Okay. We're going to do it again. We've looked at how we did it. I'm going to put down that the QA was a little bit harder. Not always true. One thing I found with software, sometimes something really easy to create in software is very hard to test. And sometimes it's something that's really hard to, something that's really easy to create in software is hard to test, and something that's hard to create in software is easy to test. So that, that's something I want to pay attention to. Okay, so we're going to do it again. How long is it going to take? We've got experience with it now. How long will it take? The same. But you're experts at it now. The same? So what was our average here? Maybe 20, 22, let's just say. Just have a number. Somewhere in that range. The highest was, so the range we had was as low as 11. The range was 11 to 32. That was our range. That often happens. What if I estimated for you how long it would take? Would you get it done quicker, or would you take longer? This is one of the problems of estimates. Okay, so we're going to do it again. You already know how long it will take. I should have wrote that down. Probably something close to 22 seconds, right? At the very most, on average. Okay. But there is something else. This time, the rightmost column will need to add up to a specific number. The 3 numbers will have to add up to a specific number. Now, when I was 4 years old, my mother made sure I could add up a column of numbers. You're all at least 4 years old. So this is something we learn to do as little babies, and when you're all grown-up programmers, you can do that. Will that make it take longer? So how long do we think it's going to take now? Give me a number. Give me your estimate. How long will it take to do this? When the rightmost column needs to add up to a specific number, I will give you when we start the exercise. 30, 36, 30, 30. Anybody think it will take longer than 30 seconds? What? 40 seconds?
It depends on the number. It may be impossible.
Okay, it could be. So we've learned the most important lesson today. When you're asked for an estimate, what do you say? It depends. It depends. Because you know every time that you're going to come back to bite you. But make an assumption that you will be able to create this number. Okay? So we have 30 seconds at the least and 40 seconds at the most. Anybody think it will take longer? How long?
I just have a question.
Oh, a question.
Is there like a specific sum for each line, or is it just for one?
The rightmost column,
Only one.
the rightmost column will add up to a specific number.
Okay.
The rest you can use any numbers you want as long as you use all 9 numbers and there are no duplicates. You still need to use all 9 numbers.
Is it an integer you're going to give?
It's just 9 numbers. Are those not integers? You're good programmers. You already know it's not going to be possible. Okay, so we had somebody who said 30 and somebody who said 40. That's our range, okay? Remember, you still need to get it QA'd. And if you're going to get a QA, it has to be someone who's also doing the exercise. You can't have a specific QA person who's just sitting there waiting to do your QA. Pens? Do you need a pen? Yes, we have some pens. Does anybody else need a pen? So this is a good point. If you didn't have a pen, you could always borrow a pen from someone else. So you need more pens back there? I'm going to run out of pens soon. I still have 4 more. If you would like, I can give you a little pen knife, and you could draw it in blood. You need a pen?
Yeah.
Pen? Can you hand this over to that gentleman? You need a pen? Anyone else need a pen? Pen? So I'm going to ask a question now. How much longer are humans going to use pens? We may not have them much longer, right? It's just something we don't use or bring with us anymore. Are we all ready to do that? You need a pen? Question? I'm sorry? Speed up the work? There's no pressure here. No pressure. You made an estimate. How you deal with it, that's up to you. I'll make a good point of this. This is a conference where we're just here to learn some things. If you feel pressure, that's on you, right? That's on you. Okay, so everybody get your stopwatch ready. I'm going to warn you about something. A lot of people forget to reset their stopwatch. So make sure your stopwatch is reset. It's ready to go at 0. When I count down, we'll count down like before, and then you'll start. Only QA if you have done the exercise. You cannot have someone QA if they haven't finished. So you finish your work, find someone else who's finished your work. If they're further away, go further away. All right? I'm going to count down. 3, 2, 1. And there's the number that we need to have. The rightmost column must add up to 15. Use all 9 numbers, no duplicates, and the rightmost column adds up to 15. Dang, our estimate's getting close. No woots yet. You need someone to I didn't hear enough woot woots. Is everybody done? You done? Who's not done? Okay, 1 or 2 not done. I'll give you 7 more seconds. Is that enough time? Okay, so I'm going to start gathering the times. That wasn't so hard, was it? I believe you're in this, right? So what was your time? Let's have that in seconds. That's 73 seconds. Your time. Same? $57. That often happens in pairs. Who QA'd your work? He can't have QA'd your work because he wasn't done. 1.5? Oh. And yours? Okay, let's go here. What's that? 29, 27, 31, 33, 90, 32, 33, 35, 31. There's one more.
1 minute and 80 seconds.
Could you give them that in total seconds? 68 seconds? 78 seconds? And over here? 30? 30. They usually will go in pairs because if your QA was near you. Okay, first of all, I'm not sure our estimate was so good, but that it goes either way. Let's see. Our range is as fast as 15. Who QA'd your work? Who was 15? You QA'd his work. And how long did it take you? So that's still, there's a discrepancy here. Okay. Remember, if you're not done with your work, you can't QA someone else's work yet, the way that we're doing this here. The highest one is probably 90. So our range is increased a bit. Our range is increased between the best and the lowest, the highest and the lowest. The average here is about what? Somebody calculate that for me, maybe 50 seconds, maybe 45. That's close enough, right? We don't need to be accurate. And which was harder, doing the work or QAing it? About the same. Doing the work was a little harder. So I'm going to put work/QA because maybe for some people it was one or the other. Did anybody have to wait till someone could QA the work? There's some back there. Okay, you know what that's called? That's queuing. Waiting is waste. Queuing is waste. It is the primary waste. It causes the most economic waste in product development, not just software development, according to Reinertsen. If that's true, we better do something about the queuing. Okay, we learned something. What if we were to do this again? What if we were to do this again? How long would it take you to do it? Remember what I told you before. What's that? How long will it take? It depends. If you learn one thing here today, is how to say it depends. Okay. From the manager's point of view, it's the same work. Why did this take you longer? Why did it take you longer? A constraint. We added a constraint. Can I see your two stickies, your two exercises? Okay. These are different. Which one took longer? Nobody could judge from looking at this. Nobody can make the judgment. That was more complicated, so it took longer. No, that was more complicated, so it took longer. There's no difference. From the outside, it looks like it's the same. I've actually had bosses. You know, in the days when the internet first started and we were making web pages, then they would say, how long to make these web pages? As if each page took the same amount of time, they would think, we just need to know how much it costs to do one web page, and we could calculate by how many pages they need. This isn't the truth. The one could look much harder. That's right. So one could actually look harder because it was sorted. We needed a sorting algorithm. Luckily, that's built into us. But you get the picture. Yes, good point. Okay, so we're going to do it again. How long is it going to take? You already said it depends. So it's going to be exactly the same as last time, which looked like this, but with an additional constraint. So how long is it going to take? The next constraint is the top row will need to add up to a specific number. So how long is it going to take? Anybody want to give me a number? We know for right now that our estimate before was a little bit low. Not enough, a little bit low. If our average was 45, what do we think this will take? You think it'll take less time? Because you have so much experience now. Will it take more or less time? More time. It depends. So let's give an estimate. Are you brave enough to give an estimate? I will say this. My grandfather, he came, over here, you have these wars, so you count them. War I, War II, back in the United States, we have to come to Europe to go to a war. So he came here to the first war, and he said, every day you sit in the mud and you don't advance, every day it's the same. It's terrible. But that's sort of the thing here. It's like, if we did this again, we kind of know the space we're in, but we're adding something new. I know for him, it was good to come back home again. a lot of people didn't get to. That probably didn't connect with you real well here, but what I'm kind of saying is we don't really know what tomorrow is going to bring. What is tomorrow's estimate? 2 minutes? 2 minutes is 120 seconds. Is that lowest or highest? Anybody think it'll take less time? 60? Anybody think it'll take more than 120? Okay, so we'll use that as our range. Here we go again. I'll count down. Make sure that you have your timer set, ready to, your stopwatch set, ready to run. I really like this stopwatchy thing that they have. It works pretty good. Here we go. You ready to go? All the rules are the same. New number. 3, 2, 1, start. And there you go. The top row adds up to 9. The rightmost column adds up to 15. You're already ready? Don't share your work. You have to use all 9 numbers. No duplicates. Now I see a few people ready to compare. Do a good job of QAing. It can be complex. There's somebody who's done. Another one done. You're doing better than you last time. Better than last time. You're good at wooting. Remember, I learned this from Tim Ottinger, and when I saw this done with 300 people, it was really pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm going to give you about another minute because, hey, you said at 120 seconds, which we have just hit the 120 seconds now. We'll go a little bit longer. Okay. I'm going to assume we're pretty close. Let's see how we did. I hope you're learning something as we do this. We'll grasp our times again. If you're not yet done and I'm pointing at you, then we'll go on to the next one. We'll come back and get yours. So if we finished here, we're finished. Okay. Okay. We'll start over here. 49. Below our range. 49. 45. 118 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to put a couple infinities there. 61. 64. 116. 81. 51. 115. Behind you.
2 minutes and 10 seconds.
So that's a 130. 53. Did I get yours? What's that? 47. Okay, so our range now is 45 to infinity. 130. I worked right next to, I'm sitting here, and this gentleman's sitting here for 2 years, and none of his work ever got into production without somebody else, often me, redoing his work, because it never worked. He had an infinity. And I remember in one meeting where they brought him up to honor him for the work he was doing. I never understood it, why that happened. But that happens. There's some people, their work never gets done. That's okay. I don't know how to calculate it into this. We'll kind of ignore the infinities for now. What do you think the average here was? Is probably something over a minute by a little bit, maybe let's say 65 or 70, just to have a number. Was the QA harder or was the work harder? For a lot of people, this one becomes the work is harder. Because the QA is just checking, did they do the math right and did they use all the digits? But the work, you got to calculate something there. Okay. So what did we do? We're going to do it again. So how long is this going to take?
10 minutes.
It depends, because I'm going to add another constraint. So if we could see the problem before we start the thing, then you could figure out how long would that take by solving for it. And we never get to do that in our software. You don't do the work first and then go to the boss and say, yes, this will take 2 hours because I just finished. Do you know who Bob Martin is? You know Bob Martin. He wrote Clean Code. He would give a talk. I was on a conference circuit with him of 3 conferences. He gave the talk each time, and I gave this talk. And his talk is on why we needed estimates. And one of the things he said was, and they just feel like he was supporting my point of view. He said, well, we don't know how long it will take until we're done. That's sort of what I'm saying. That's sort of what I'm saying. And he gives examples of work that he overestimated and work that he underestimated. It's like, yeah, he was making all of my arguments for me, but saying we need the estimates. One of the things I liked, he said, is we're the only ones with enough knowledge to say, no, this can't be done. But we usually don't even know that. My father was an engineer in a phone company in the days before computers. Matter of fact, there's a movie that he's in where they needed a gentleman to trace a call. Now, in those days, to trace a call, somebody would say, the phone got plugged in here. This operator plugs the cable in, and then they have to trace that wire to where it comes out conceptually at the other end where somebody else has plugged something in this building, so we can know exactly where that call went. And they show him doing that. He's up on a ladder following some wires along. So he was an engineer from the days when they were plugging phones in till the days where it's computerized, completely digital switching. In between was analog switching and transistors. Okay, so he's an engineer and he understands this stuff. And he used to tell me things such as that we're hearing here today. It's like you can cut a problem in half and get a better idea of where it is, right? Have you ever, you know that concept, right? There's a bug in here. If we can prove it's not over here, then it's got to be over here. When we get over there, we can cut that in half again, cut that half again. It's a process of discovery. It's not a process of, I know where the problem is. We trace it to find where it is. Okay, one more constraint. How long is this going to take? It's going to be exactly the same as before, except for one more constraint. This time, from the top right to the bottom left, we'll have to add up to a specific number. So how long will that take you? What's the least amount of time? So some people got this done in 45 seconds. So let's say 60 seconds, and what's the top? 3 minutes, 180. That's good enough for me. I'm the manager. I know that any number you give me, I have to triple, right? I worked with a guy, a very brilliant programmer, and he said at one company, when I would bring my estimate into the boss, he would always double it. And in another company, the boss would always cut it in half. Same guy, 2 different managers. I didn't really quite, the point of his story is it's all random anyways. Depends on what your manager thinks. The one manager thinks whatever he says is going to take him longer. The other thinks whatever he says is going to take him less time. He actually was probably the best programmer I ever worked with. And they would never listen to what he actually told them, which was always, I don't know how long this will take. Let's get it done. Okay, let's go on. Got your timer ready? Your stopwatch ready? Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, start. And we need to add up to the number 18. 9, 15, and 18. Using all 9 numbers, all the numbers, no duplicates. You told me that it will take you 60 seconds up to 180 seconds. Look, somebody already ready to get proofed. Look at that. See, this is in your company, wherever you're working. Those people, you hate those people. Listen to that. They're wooting at less than 45 seconds. And now you can see he's willing to QA someone else's work now because his work is done. Another woot. More wooting. It's more like it's like making popcorn. At first you hear a couple pops, and then a few more, and eventually it dies out. I think there's about 10 who are done. Find someone who can QA for you without disturbing them. One more time, I learned this from Tim Ottinger. You should ask him to this conference next year. He's really brilliant. Oh, we got a wooting here. No, you're thinking of wooting. Yeah, you can pretend you're finished. Let's see a show of hands. Who is not yet done? Not done. Okay. You have a minute more from our estimate. Go ahead, take your time. I want to be very clear. This is a kind of a number puzzle that some people have a lot of difficulty with. So you do not need to feel diminished in any way if you can't finish this. It's not everybody has the same capabilities, and one thing is with these kinds of number puzzles, some people are good at them and some people are not. Managers are never good at these, but when I first did this, I got it done, but I wasn't one of the fastest ones. Matter of fact, I think the fastest one, I'll share it in just a moment. We're going to go for another, we're done with the 3-minute estimate. We're going to stop. And let's review how we did. How did we do? So we're going to gather numbers starting right here. 53. So you were under our estimate. Infinity. Still not yet QA'd. No solution. Infinity. Infinity. 80. 57. 70. 120. 68. 88. 160. Infinity. 210. Any others? 158? 128. That could be the difference whether you get a raise or not. One more. 90. Okay, I took some that we didn't do before, but those infinities, those are the people who will become managers later. Now, you know, I told you earlier, I'll try to make fun of managers as much as possible, but I'm going to tell you a true story. I was hired on a job where I was hired to work on some legacy code that had become so difficult to work on that the gentleman who had invented the code and wrote it and supported it for 15 years could no longer work on it without breaking it. So they promoted him and moved me into and hired me into his spot. And that was, I think he was a pretty smart person because he wrote a piece of software that was earning about $250 million a year for that company. I mean, you can't laugh at that. He deserves to retire with a good retirement with that kind of income from his product. But this is what often happens. This is often, and I was willing to take it because I love working on legacy code. Not a lot of people do. So it gave me a good opportunity to have what I considered a really good position where I was able to do some really, to me, valuable things. But let's see, our range is from 53, somebody beat our estimate, to infinity. But of the ones we measured, 160, okay? The average here, not counting the infinities, is maybe 120. Oh, it was 210, okay. Let's say 2 minutes, 120. I think it's higher than that. Which was harder, the QA or the work? Clearly, the work was awfully difficult. And this is really simple compared to software development. I actually wrote a program to generate these because I did this at a company where I was going to do like 10 workshops, and I didn't want them sharing the same puzzle. So I made a thing that would just generate these for me. So we could write software that would automate this, and we wouldn't need to do it anymore. As programmers, that's what we do for a living. Did we learn anything? What's the observation? What's that? So finding QA can really be difficult. How much queuing or waiting was there getting someone who could QA your work? Was it 5 seconds? 10 seconds? 10 to 20 seconds at least. Maybe a third of your time was just waiting until some people got done and were willing to do the QA. This is queuing. I have a whole talk on queuing. This is the problem with utilization. I have a whole talk on utilization. If you want to do a conference and invite one speaker, I can do 10 sessions. So it'd be quite a bargain. I'm kind of making fun. These things are all closely related. And to me, they all really closely relate to collaboration. That we have to wait for the QA is a collaboration problem. It's not a management problem, the way managers usually think of things. So remember, it was just 9 digits drawn in a tic-tac-toe board. If you show those 2 drawings, the one that took you the least time and the one that took you the most time, they couldn't tell which one took the longest. It's hidden. That's hidden. So this is the way it normally goes. The first batch through takes a certain amount of time. And look, it almost hit exactly. It doubles again, and it doubles again. Every little constraint that we add can double it. It's not a matter of adding. Once I added that you have to add up, when we did the next one, it didn't add the same exact time of doing one when we did the next. So whoever did it the fastest, were you able to reuse your work? Did an earlier version work for you? Yes. Nope. So often I will have somebody, there was that one of these that I did where there was a woman who couldn't get the second one done within the time frame, but she still kept working on it. So by the time we did the third one or the fourth one, where we did the 3 constraints, when I put that puzzle on the board, she stood up and said, "I'm done." She was done in 1 second because her previous work already solved for the current problem. So she was the fastest, where before she was the slowest. There is a famous religious text that says something like, "He who is first shall be last, and he who is last shall be first." I don't know. I'm not a very religious person, and I don't know if I even understand that. Okay, so here's the crux of what we're dealing with here. The effort is just the writing of the numbers, apparently. But that's not what the effort is. The effort's the thinking, but as we add constraints, there's a risk that the work we did before won't work again. So we have to do a whole new calculations. And then there's the uncertainty. The uncertainty is, can we solve it at all? So we know now it will take us approximately, what did I say our average was? Oh, I didn't even calculate. Did I calculate an average? Yeah, I did. 120. So if we say, oh, one of these 3 constraint problems will take us 120 seconds, then we can say 10 times 120 seconds is how long it will take. You're trying to figure these out. I'm going to show you closer. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. Now you're getting all the details. How long is it going to take you to do this? You know, I already taught you what to say. It depends. In this case, you have all the information in front of you. What does it depend on? Are they doable? Are they doable? I worked on a project once. It was an open funding kind of a thing where they would get more money if they could accomplish the stuff that they set out to do, and then more, and then more. And the big problem was some mathematical calculations that they hadn't yet figured out. Everything else was programming. Programming is easy. That's where we started this talk today. Programming is easy. The hard thing is making it do something that's really meaningful and useful. And they never figured out the math calculations. They kept getting funded till it became clear we've done everything we could do except for we haven't yet figured out the math we need to have this software do what it's supposed to do. And then it collapsed. But this was a company that was successful about a year based on funding for something they were hoping would happen. That was our work earlier that's here. It's a hope. Okay, so you can't do this one. It won't work. There's no way to do it unless you change the way maths work. Can you do that? Maybe. But if you can reinvent how numbers work, maybe in base 10 this won't work, but in some other base maybe it does work. I don't know. You can reinvent it. Okay, that's the uncertainty part of it. I think we've covered enough with this. Let's go back to our other slides. Is everybody kind of totally worn out now? We have only 13 minutes left. So I think I want to quickly cover how I would do my work, because that's why you all came. It's like you do want to be told how to do your work, right? But I need to stop right at the end of this because somebody arranged a meeting for me right after this. So we make all these important decisions based on guesses. This is what estimates give to us. We cannot predict the future. If you think you can, tell me your secret. I'd love to learn it. And why are you going to conferences if you know how to predict the future? You wouldn't be here. You'd be on your yacht somewhere. So we can't do this. It can't be done. People tell me we need to have the estimates so that we can make the decisions. We need help making decisions. There's a secret to this. For about €1, I can sell you a decision-making device, and you all know what it is, right? If I want to make a profit, I'll sell it to you for €1.10. Okay, it's that simple. We don't need help making decisions, because flipping a coin will help you make a decision. Should we do it? Oh, yep, we'll do it. That's not what we need help with. We need help making good decisions. There is a big, big difference. And the only way we can get that help is if we find a process that lets us increase the amount of knowledge about what we're doing. That means we need to find a process of discovery. So I'm going to skip ahead. Well, we'll just really quickly cover this because we're going to run out of time. When are we officially done? In 12 minutes or 8 minutes? This thing got yellow already, has it? No, it's still green. How much time do we have? Yes, 11 more minutes? Okay, I can live with that if that's correct. Is that correct? Okay. Estimate how long it will take me to cover this. Okay, you know the Standish group and their, they call the chaos report. First done in '94. 31% failures of big surveys they've taken across the industry. Challenged, which means you couldn't deliver everything and not on time. So some problems, lots of problems, or successes. What do they mean by success? They got it done on time and within budget. The worst measurement for success of a project you could possibly have. What's better than on time and on budget? Sooner and for less money, right? So why do we use that as because we will always spend all the money that's put in front of us. The last one they did was in 2020, and this is the numbers they came up with. Failures, not quite as much. Challenged, almost exactly the same, and a little more success. And why? Because we've improved the way we think about our work, which if you read their report which costs you a couple $100. It's about having a good place, a good team, and a good sponsor, and you do things in a lean manner. They use different terms, but that's the idea. So, I don't think we're going to do any more about this. I think you just need to ask yourself this question. Now, don't go to your boss when you're done with this and say to them, hey, this is no good. These estimates are terrible. This guy at the conference really straightened me out, because they will then let you go. And you don't. Now, I know here in France, they never can fire you, right? So they'll put you in the worst job possible at your company if you go tell them this. So don't do that. I'm going to jump ahead through bias and just read this really fast. Why do we let this happen? This is about priming, how easy it is to convince people it's going to take less time than they thought. And so they come up with an estimate that's too low. I'm going to skip ahead. Lots of stuff, because I want to talk about how I actually work. Remember, we're only addressing software development. Here's Kinevin. If you don't know Kinevin, this is like an 8-hour workshop, so we can't cover everything. But if you just look at it really quick, you'll see all the stuff. Okay. When I first started doing software development, they would bring me a set of requirements that reminds me of this piece of art. Everything's in its place. It all looks well organized. It's very clear until you start working on it. I started thinking software projects are more like this. This is a work of art by Jackson Pollock. You can see some patterns in here, but making sense of it is very difficult. And it's worse than that pattern is. Because at the edges, it's fuzzy. You get to the edge, you go, oh, wait, there's a whole lot more over there. As you look up and down, hey, there's more down there and there's more up there. This is, to me, more what it's like. This is what software development's been like for me. So I had to come up with my own way of working with this. And the way I would do it is I find some small bit that we can understand so I can start on it. So this is going to be about the criteria for that. It's the learning that's going to be important and something I call the 80-20, 80-20. If I don't have time to get to that, then you'll invite me back for next year. All right? So this requires no estimates to work this way. That means we don't need to use estimates to work this way. We don't need to know how long this will take to be able to do software development well. I'm looking for a chunk that I can start on that has certain qualities. It has to be discrete and distinct. Distinct means it's clearly discrete. Discrete to me means it is its own thing. It's clearly its own thing. So that's the first thing. The second one is I need to understand it. I need to get an understanding. So if it's clear, if it's its own thing, and I understand it, I can start working on it. It has to be potentially valuable, or why are we going to do it? Getting good at that is probably the best skill that I think that I've been able to develop for myself. It's making a guess, and it's kind of an estimate. Do we think this could be useful? But we want to find out soon, not later. That means it needs to get delivered really quickly, and it has to be cohesive. It means this thing that we chose belongs together. It is drawn to each other. It's meant to be together. That's what cohesive, to me, cohesive means. Most of the time we're doing stuff that isn't cohesive. And it isn't distinct and discrete. To be able to do this, it gives us a value, but we don't need to make any estimate to do that. It's something will become instantly small regardless of what we think it is in size. In other words, if I look at this is like a bunch of Post-it notes, and I pull it apart, are either of these as big as the original? It's two parts. It's automatically smaller. I don't need to estimate that this is smaller than this. It is smaller when I pull it apart. That's what this is about. Okay? When I have these qualities, I can start work. All I care about is starting work. That's why I don't care if we have 5 projects we want. We don't need to decide which one. We need to find a way to get started on each one. That most companies don't see that as valuable puzzles me. Puzzles me. But we'll get to that in a bit. If something can be decoupled, that means that we can work on it. That means that we can deploy it. That means that we can learn about it by it being used and then we can provide feedback. Now, the feedback's happening all throughout this stuff, but why do we want to do this? So we can steer. Steering is more important than anything else here. What if I were to offer you a bicycle, a brand new, beautiful bicycle? The top of the line, best bicycle you can get. You like bicycles here in France, right? You have a whole bicycle competition where people ride up and down the hills and crash and everything. But I tell you, this is the top of the line bicycle, but you can't steer it. Would you want that bicycle? What would happen to you on that bicycle? You would crash. Same thing with a car. If I offer you the very best car, oh, but there's no steering mechanism. You wouldn't want that car. We need to be able to steer. On a car, how frequently do you want to steer? That's how I want my software development to be. Does that make sense? The steering is what's important, not the knowing how long it will take. We're giving up the valuable thing for something of no value. So it's all about the steering. Notice this. I've said it 3 times. That's got to be important. But this little process of choosing something that works for us and doing it in small bits leads to us having this continuous learning environment. Now, I'm going to quickly give you an example. If I could take this bit of work, this is from real life. In 2003, I had a project. They had 80 pages, and I don't know if this is probably not 80 pages. They were failing on this project. They had been working on it about a year, and it was an enhancement to another project. They couldn't even deploy it anymore because there was too many bugs in the new work, and they couldn't fix bugs in the old work because they had no way to divide it out in those days. They called me in because it was failing. They didn't know what to do, and I said, well, let's see if we can do anything. Revert the code back to day 1, choose one thing you want, and then we'll see. So they figured out the thing they wanted. I think it was this one right here. It was in the middle. And I said, great, let me read it. I read it. I can't understand it, but I understand this part. Would that be valuable if we could deliver it? Yeah, that'd bring a little value. That's all we want. This is an experiment. Let's test this. So we looked at it. Was it discrete? Yeah, it was distinct from the rest? Yes. Was it understandable? Yes. Was it potentially valuable? Yes. Was it cohesive? Oh, no, we could remove this part. That's all we did, and we deployed it. It took us about a day, less than a day, to do it. I deployed it at the end of the week because I didn't want them to think we can make miracles in one day. I deployed it. And then I say, what other thing off of this do you want? Well, there's something in here that's more interesting. That delivered enough value. We picked out another one. This went on for 3 weeks. I read it, can't understand it. I understand that part. Is that enough to bring a little value? It could bring value. Here's a part that's not cohesive, that's distinct. We did it. Out of this project, we've now done, I've already lost the one feature. There it is. This much work. We did this one more time. Picture this. 3 features. Only a little bit of each of 3 features. And I went back to the boss. We're almost a month into it. Now we're deploying. They're getting value out of it. This was worth about $30,000 a week to this organization. We found that out by actually delivering it. A year, they gained nothing. Now, this wasn't any magic. It's just, let's deliver something. At the end of that 3 weeks to 4 weeks, I went to the boss and said, what's interesting next? And this is what they said. There's another project we need to get going on. We set aside all this stuff they thought they wanted. This was enough. We set that aside. We only had a very small team. I hope you see the value here. I call this the 80-20, 80-20, and that's going to end us for today. Here's how the 80-20, 80-20. Was it a Frenchman or was it an Italian with the 80-20? Who was that? Where was he from?
Italy. He's Italian.
He's Italian. I'm sorry. So those Italians really got you up on this one. The 80-20, 80-20 is basically this. Pareto principle twice. If 20% of the work brings 80% of the value, let's only do the 20%. It's hard to find that. But once we pick something we think will bring value, let's only do 20% of it and see if we can get that value. If we could do that really purely on any project, how much actual work would we do? You mathematicians, 80-20 times 2, 80-20 times 80-20 is what? How much percent? 20% of 20% is 4%. Thank you. Some of you have that math knowledge I don't have. This is the 80-20, 80-20. If we can peel off purely the 20% and only do 20% of it, we get the 80-20, 80-20. 4%, and in this was the first time I was really able to exercise it in 2003, and it was just such a miracle. I said, that's how to do it. Don't think we need to do all of this. Let's just do the little bit. I think we've covered too much. I'll end it with this. Just deliver features until they're bored with it and move to the next one. Most operations, they believe we need to do everything. Everything they thought they needed. I'm not sure that's a winner. So I covered a lot of stuff. I'll show you the rest of the slides just so you know what we're doing, but we got to the end, right? So I'll just say one slide in here that's really important to me. If we can do this in little bits, that takes 2 or 3 hours, over and over again, it's the steering that allows us to have really great success. Now, that's not a rule. That's not a truth. That's how I see it. And I've just exercised it over and over. I think it's very valuable. And this is what Agile is. Just over and over, we get to do that little cycle. Now, Agile may not be the perfect way to do it, but I think we're officially done. And I cannot stay to answer questions, but I'll come back after my meeting. I'll be here the rest of the day and all of tomorrow. So thank you very much.